It was a day like any other, except for one small detail. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with tension, so palpable you could almost taste it in the air. Elon Musk, the genius entrepreneur and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, walked into the courtroom with his usual confidence. But something was different today. The eyes of the entire courtroom were locked onto him, as if they were waiting for something. His usual charisma didn't feel as powerful today. At the center of the drama stood a formidable force, Judge Charlotte Stone. A seasoned legal mind, she was known not only for her sharp intellect but also for her unyielding stance in the courtroom. People had whispered about her, how she had never backed down from a challenge, and how she wasn't afraid to show her sharp tongue. But today, it wasn't just the legal community that was intrigued by her. Today, the world watched closely. After all, it wasn't every day that the eccentric billionaire inventor found himself sitting across from someone with the power to change the course of his career. As the proceedings began, Judge Stone's cold gaze never wavered from Musk. "Mr. Musk," she began, her voice steady, "you've built your empire on pushing the boundaries of what's possible, but when it comes to your public statements, it seems you've crossed a line. Are you willing to take responsibility for the damage they've caused?" The question hit like a punch. Musk blinked, momentarily caught off guard. His usual bravado, the thing that had carried him through countless challenges, faltered for a moment. He knew exactly what she was referring to, his infamous tweets, the ones that had sent stock markets into a frenzy and caught the attention of the SEC. They had become the center of this lawsuit, and now, he had to answer for them. "Your Honor, those were just words. Ideas, perhaps, meant to inspire. It was never my intention to cause harm," Musk replied, attempting to regain his footing. Judge Stone raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Inspiration, Mr. Musk? Or reckless self-promotion at the expense of others? You're no stranger to controversy, but this time, your words have consequences." Musk swallowed, sensing the weight of her words. His mind raced. How could he turn this around? He had faced many battles in the past, creating companies from scratch, defying expectations, but none of that had prepared him for this moment. None of that had prepared him for Judge Charlotte Stone. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. The words were so familiar now, a staple of his social media presence. Musk had built a following by staying authentic to his followers, showing them the real, unfiltered version of himself. It was what had drawn them to him, kept them engaged, even when he took risks that others would shy away from. But now, standing in this courtroom, those same followers weren't going to help him. He was on his own. His team of lawyers shifted uneasily behind him, whispering amongst themselves. Musk was used to being in control, to being the one with the answers. Yet, for the first time in years, he felt like he was on the back foot. The courtroom was silent, every ear tuned to the back and forth between Musk and the judge. Stone was relentless, firing question after question, each one more pointed than the last. The more Musk tried to explain himself, the more the judge seemed to challenge him, throwing legal jargon and pointing to precedents that seemed to further entrench him in a corner. But then, something shifted. Musk's mind, which had always worked faster than most, began to fire on all cylinders. He knew that this moment wasn't just a typical legal battle, it was something much bigger. He had to outthink her, not just outlast her. There was a shift in the energy in the room. Judge Stone may have been relentless, but Musk wasn't about to be a passive player in this game. His eyes narrowed, and a slight smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. He was starting to see the cracks in her approach. It wasn't that he didn't respect her, on the contrary, he admired her sharp mind. But he was no stranger to sharp minds himself. "Your Honor," Musk began, leaning forward slightly, "I get it. You don't trust me. You think I'm just a flashy businessman with no regard for the consequences of my words. But what if I told you that you're looking at this the wrong way? What if I told you that my intentions were never to deceive, but to push the boundaries of what's possible in a world that's reluctant to change?" Stone's eyes hardened. And how do you expect me to believe that, Mr. Musk? I don't expect you to believe anything. But maybe, just maybe, you'll see that sometimes progress requires taking risks. Big risks. Even if those risks involve uncomfortable conversations, Musk replied, his voice gaining confidence with each word. The room was still, everyone waiting for the judge's response. For a moment, it felt as if time had frozen. Musk could feel the weight of every person's gaze. Would she strike him down for his audacity? Or would she recognize the genius behind his approach? Judge Stone was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. But then, a slight smirk tugged at the corner of her mouth. It was barely perceptible, but Musk caught it. She was intrigued. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Musk," Stone said finally, her voice low and even. "But I'll give you credit for one thing, your willingness to risk it all. Let's see if you can back it up." The air in the courtroom shifted again, but this time, it wasn't as oppressive. It was lighter, more charged with possibility. Musk knew that this wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and don't forget to share this with your friends, Musk thought, the irony of the situation not lost on him. In a way, this was his greatest challenge yet. And while he wasn't sure how it would end, one thing was certain, he wasn't backing down. With a newfound resolve, Musk stood tall, ready to take on whatever came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk wasn't born into wealth, fame, or influence. Far from it. In fact, his early life was filled with challenges and hardships that would have stopped most people from dreaming as big as he did. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, on June 28, 1971, Elon was the eldest son of Errol and May Musk. His father was an engineer, and his mother, a model and dietitian. While his family wasn't poor, they were far from wealthy, and the Musk household was far from the picture-perfect family unit many would expect from a future tech mogul. Elon's parents divorced when he was young, and the split had a profound impact on him. His relationship with his father was distant, and as a child, he often felt like an outsider in his own family. Growing up, he was an awkward, introverted kid who found solace in books and computers. In fact, his love for technology and computers started early. At the age of 10, Musk bought his first computer, a Commodore VIC-20. He taught himself programming and, by the age of 12, had already created and sold his own video game called Blaster. It was a simple space-themed game, but for Musk, it was a taste of what was to come, an early indicator of his entrepreneurial spirit and relentless drive. Though his early life wasn't easy, Musk's passion for innovation and technology was undeniable. He moved to Canada at the age of 17 to attend Queen's University, a decision that would eventually lead him to the United States. Elon was never one to take the typical route. After spending 2 years at Queen's University, he transferred to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States, where he earned dual degrees in physics and economics. During his time at Penn, Musk's entrepreneurial instincts kicked into high gear. In 1995, instead of continuing on the traditional path toward graduate school, he dropped out of a PhD program at Stanford after just 2 days. He chose to pursue something more ambitious, creating his own future. Along with his brother Kimball, he founded Zip2, a company that provided business directories and maps for newspapers. The company was sold to Compaq for $307 million in 1999, and Musk walked away with $22 million. But selling Zip2 was just the beginning. Musk wasn't content with simply enjoying the fruits of his success, he had bigger dreams in mind. With the money he made from Zip2, Musk went on to found X.com, an online payment company that would later become PayPal. Under Musk's leadership, X.com grew rapidly, and in 2002, eBay acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion in stock. Elon Musk walked away with a cool $165 million. But it wasn't the money that motivated Musk, it was the potential to change the world. His next venture, SpaceX, was driven by his belief that humanity's future was in space. His goal was nothing less than to make space travel affordable and to eventually help make humans a multiplanetary species. People laughed at him. A private company? Launching rockets? They called him crazy. But Musk's belief in the mission was unwavering. Over the years, SpaceX had faced multiple failures. Several rocket launches had failed, and the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. But Musk refused to quit. And eventually, his perseverance paid off. In 2008, SpaceX became the first privately funded company to send a spacecraft to the International Space Station, a monumental achievement that put Musk on the map as a visionary in both technology and space exploration. Meanwhile, Musk's other company, Tesla, was facing its own set of challenges. Founded in 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, Tesla was struggling to bring electric cars to market. Musk joined the company in 2004 as an investor and chairman of the board, eventually becoming the CEO in 2008. At the time, the company was on the verge of collapse. But Musk's aggressive leadership style and unwavering commitment to electric vehicles turned Tesla into the juggernaut it is today. Tesla didn't just build electric cars, it redefined what it meant to drive an electric vehicle, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with technology. Despite all of his success, Musk had made a habit of putting himself in the center of controversy. His tweets, which often seemed impulsive and off the cuff, had repeatedly gotten him into trouble. Whether he was challenging analysts, making bold predictions about the future, or discussing his next big idea, Musk was never afraid to speak his mind, sometimes to his own detriment. It wasn't long before his tweets attracted the attention of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and Musk found himself in hot water over statements that some felt were misleading or manipulative. That brings us to the courtroom, where Musk now found himself in an entirely different kind of battle. It wasn't just about technology, space, or electric cars anymore, it was about his reputation. And more than that, it was about proving that the man who had built a multi-billion-dollar empire from the ground up wasn't someone who could be easily broken by a judge's scrutiny. But what made Elon Musk truly unique was his ability to think outside the box, to find unconventional solutions to seemingly impossible problems. While many people would have cracked under the pressure of a high-profile trial, Musk wasn't going to let one setback define him. In fact, he welcomed the challenge. If anything, it motivated him even more. Musk had faced much bigger obstacles in his life, financial ruin, multiple business failures, public scorn, but he had always come out on top. His personal mantra was simple: failure wasn't the end, it was just part of the process. And now, facing off against one of the most formidable judges in the country, Elon Musk was ready to prove that he was more than just a businessman, he was a force of nature. As he sat in that courtroom, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, Musk knew that this moment would be a defining one in his life. The stakes were higher than ever before, and this time, it wasn't about rockets or electric cars, it was about showing the world that, no matter how powerful his opponent, he had the intellect, the tenacity, and the strategy to rise above it all. And while Judge Charlotte Stone was formidable, Musk knew that in the game of high stakes, it wasn't always the most powerful who won, it was the one who could outthink the rest. As the trial progressed, the tension in the courtroom only grew. The first few days were an exercise in precision, Elon Musk's defense team working tirelessly to counter Judge Charlotte Stone's sharp legal maneuvers. But the battle was more than just legalities. It was a high-stakes psychological game, and Musk wasn't just playing to win a case. He was playing to win the narrative, the story that would be told to the public, the investors, and the media. Judge Stone, though, was no stranger to these games. Her courtroom was her domain, and she had honed her ability to cut through the noise and see through the bravado. As the days went by, her strategy became clearer: she wasn't going to make it easy for Musk. She didn't just want to hear him admit to his mistakes, she wanted to see if he truly understood the consequences of his actions and whether he could be held accountable. But Elon Musk was a different breed of defendant. He wasn't the kind of person to back down in the face of adversity. As his lawyers made their arguments, Musk sat in the defendant's chair, his mind whirring with possible solutions and counter-strategies. The case, at its core, was about Musk's use of social media. A few years prior, a tweet from Musk had set off a chain reaction. The tweet in question was simple: "AM considering taking Tesla private at $420. Funding secured." That tweet had sent Tesla's stock prices soaring, triggering an investigation by the SEC. Musk was accused of misleading investors and making false statements that could have affected the market. The issue at hand wasn't just the content of the tweet itself but the broader implications of Musk's approach to communication. To some, it was a visionary CEO doing what he did best, thinking outside the box, stirring the pot, making waves. To others, it was a reckless move that endangered the financial stability of Tesla and its investors. In the courtroom, Judge Stone was relentless, presenting Musk's tweet as evidence of his disregard for the rules. She hammered home her argument that a person in Musk's position, who had the power to influence the stock market with a single message, needed to act with greater responsibility. She was clear: when you speak, people listen. And when you mislead people, the damage can be catastrophic. Musk, however, wasn't someone who would easily concede. He knew the power of his words. He also knew the fine line between pushing boundaries and crossing them. His defense team leaned into his argument that the tweet was never meant to be taken literally, that it was more of a hopeful vision, a suggestion, rather than an official statement. Musk's attorneys pointed to his history of unconventional communication, arguing that it was part of what made him a unique leader in the tech world. But Judge Stone wasn't impressed. "Hopeful visions are fine in poetry, Mr. Musk," she said, her voice steady but stern. "But in the world of finance, they can cause real damage. Your words created a stir that changed the very landscape of the stock market, and now you must account for that." The pressure mounted as the courtroom watched the back-and-forth unfold. Musk's lawyers tried to deflect, presenting the case as a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of Musk's intentions. They argued that no one had been harmed by the tweet because Musk hadn't followed through with taking Tesla private. But the damage had already been done. Investors, analysts, and market regulators had been thrown into turmoil by the unpredictability of the tweet, and the market was still feeling its effects. Musk could feel the weight of Judge Stone's words hanging over him. It wasn't just about winning the case, it was about regaining control over the narrative. To lose in this courtroom would be more than just a financial setback. It could be the beginning of the unraveling of his empire. He couldn't let that happen. As the courtroom drama unfolded, it became clear that Musk's defense was going to require more than just legal arguments. Musk had always prided himself on being a visionary, someone who could see what others couldn't. It was time to tap into that vision, to find a way to turn the tide in his favor. The strategy that emerged wasn't just about defending himself against Judge Stone's accusations. It was about redefining the very nature of his tweets and his role as a public figure. Musk had always been someone who pushed boundaries, who didn't play by the conventional rules. Maybe it was time to turn that into an advantage, to argue that his unconventional methods were exactly what the world needed, especially in an age where innovation and disruption were the keys to progress. But Judge Stone wasn't going to be easily swayed. She had seen it all before: CEOs trying to spin their way out of trouble, trying to present themselves as misunderstood visionaries. Musk wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. She had no intention of letting him off the hook without a real fight. The courtroom became a battlefield, where every word, every gesture, every shift in tone could tip the scales. And in the midst of it all, Musk knew that it was time to play his trump card, something that would not only shift the balance of power but also force Judge Stone to reconsider her stance. It wasn't just a defense strategy anymore, it was a battle for control, for perception, for his future. As the final hours of the day approached, Musk felt the walls closing in on him. He knew that if he didn't act fast, if he didn't take the conversation in a new direction, Judge Stone would leave him with no room to maneuver. The stakes were higher than ever, but Musk wasn't ready to give up. He had faced worse. And now, with the world watching, he had one final move to make, a move that would change the game entirely. The courtroom grew heavy with tension as Elon Musk sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled together, contemplating his next move. He knew Judge Charlotte Stone wasn't going to be swayed by ordinary arguments, especially given the magnitude of the case. His usual tactics, throwing out bold statements, using wit and charm, wouldn't cut it here. He had to do something far more unexpected. Something that would catch everyone off guard, something only Musk could pull off. The moment to shift the narrative was fast approaching. Musk's mind raced, searching for an angle that could tilt the balance of power in his favor. He had always been a step ahead, but this time, he had to outthink the system, the court, and the judge who seemed to be one step ahead of him at every turn. As the trial entered its second week, Musk's defense team went on the offensive, trying to craft a defense that could reduce the damage of his tweet. They argued that it had never been a concrete offer to take Tesla private, it was merely a statement of intent, a vision, a possibility. But Judge Stone was unmoved. The law didn't work in hypotheticals, and the facts were clear. Musk's tweet had set off a whirlwind of chaos in the stock market. Investors had acted on it, and whether Musk had intended it or not, the consequences had been real. The turning point came during an afternoon session when Musk, sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom, was called to the stand. The murmurs in the room grew louder as the defense team made their preparations. They knew that this was the moment when Musk would have to speak for himself, his chance to not only defend his actions but to reclaim control of the narrative. Judge Stone, as always, was poised, her stern gaze never wavering as she looked across the courtroom at Musk. "Mr. Musk," she began, her voice cool and composed, "you've repeatedly referred to the tweet as a vision, a potential idea. Yet the market reacted as if it were a promise, an offer. How do you reconcile the disparity between your intentions and the outcomes of your actions?" The room fell silent. It was a question that cut to the heart of the case, one that Musk had been dreading. But instead of showing signs of weakness or hesitation, Musk leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in concentration. His response would be pivotal. He could feel the weight of the courtroom's gaze on him, but he knew he had to turn this moment into his opportunity. "Judge Stone, I'll be blunt," Musk began, his voice steady, but with an underlying intensity. "I understand how the tweet could have been interpreted as a definitive statement. But the reality is this, in this world of innovation, there are moments when you have to push the boundaries. When you see an opportunity, you don't always have the luxury of following traditional protocols." A slight murmur ran through the courtroom, but Musk didn't let it distract him. He continued. "Tesla wasn't like any other company. It was, and still is, a company that challenges everything. It challenges the very nature of how we think about energy, transportation, and sustainability. When I tweeted that message, I was thinking about what it could mean, not just for Tesla, but for the entire electric vehicle industry and for humanity at large." The tension in the room escalated. Musk's words were resonating, but so were Judge Stone's concerns. "So, you're saying your words should be excused because of the ambition behind them?" she pressed, her voice firm. "I'm saying that sometimes, you have to challenge the system," Musk replied. "And yes, it might be uncomfortable, even messy. But without that willingness to challenge the status quo, we would still be stuck in the past." And that tweet, though poorly timed and poorly communicated, was a moment of passion, of vision. It wasn't a promise, it was an idea that could have changed the way we see business. There was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. Musk had always been able to captivate an audience with his words, but now, in the confines of this courtroom, he had just turned the tables. The powerful words, "challenge the system," seemed to echo in the room, invoking a powerful, rebellious energy that Musk had always been known for. The very thing that many people considered reckless, the daring to push the boundaries, was now being framed as a radical form of leadership. But Musk wasn't done. He could see that Judge Stone, though skeptical, was beginning to soften. There was a window of opportunity, and he intended to walk right through it. Judge Stone, he continued, there's a bigger picture here. A bigger responsibility. The consequences of my actions were not the goal. They were an unintended byproduct of a vision that others couldn't see at the time. The market reacted with fear, and that's on me. But it also reacted with possibility. It ignited conversations about Tesla's future in a way that no other company had been able to do. I understand the consequences, but I also understand the power of disruption. If I hadn't taken that risk, we wouldn't be where we are today. Musk paused, allowing his words to sink in. The courtroom was still, and for a moment, there was a sense of quiet that hung in the air. Judge Stone's brow furrowed, and her gaze never left him. You expect me to believe that your tweet was an act of brilliance rather than recklessness? Musk nodded, unflinching. I expect you to understand that sometimes brilliance looks messy from the outside. But I'm not here to follow the rules of conventional business. I'm here to change the game. It was a risky statement, but Musk had always understood the power of boldness. He wasn't just defending himself anymore, he was fighting for the very philosophy that had made him a billionaire, a philosophy that had driven Tesla, SpaceX, and all of his ventures to success. And it was a philosophy that he believed was worth fighting for in this courtroom. The air in the courtroom seemed to thicken, and Judge Stone's expression remained unreadable. But Elon Musk knew something had shifted. For the first time in the trial, it wasn't just about the law anymore. It was about vision, about innovation, and about the courage to pursue something bigger than yourself, no matter the cost. As the session came to a close for the day, Musk walked out of the courtroom with a sense of purpose. The journey was far from over, but the spark had been lit. The war of words had just begun, and the final battle was about to take a very different turn. The following days in the courtroom felt like a slow-motion escalation. Every argument, every piece of evidence, seemed to build toward a singular moment that Musk knew was inevitable. The trial was no longer just about defending his actions, it was about showing the world who he truly was. It was about proving that his disruptive approach to business, while controversial, had a purpose. Elon Musk had always been a visionary, but for the first time, he realized that vision alone might not be enough. In the midst of all the legal maneuvering, he had started to see something else, the emotional toll the case was taking on him, his company, and his family. Late one evening, as Musk sat in his office reflecting on the trial's progression, he received an unexpected call from his ex-wife, Tallulah Riley. Their marriage had been tumultuous, to say the least, but in recent years, they had re-established a somewhat amicable relationship. The conversation started as casually as any two people reconnecting after time apart, but soon, the tension from the trial spilled over. Elon, how's the trial going? Tallulah's voice was calm, but there was a hint of concern. It's a fight, as expected, Musk replied, running a hand through his hair. It's not just about the legal stuff anymore. It's personal now, too. She paused for a moment, clearly choosing her words carefully. You're always so focused on the bigger picture, but what about you? What are you feeling in all of this? Musk let out a long sigh, leaning back in his chair. The weight of the trial, the media scrutiny, the ongoing demands of running multiple companies, it was taking a toll. I don't know, Tallulah. It's like I'm carrying the weight of the world. I've always believed in what I'm doing, but right now, it feels like everything's crumbling around me. The court. The media. The investors. They all think I'm just some reckless entrepreneur. That's because they don't understand you, Elon, she said softly. They only see the man who's made bold moves, who doesn't conform. They don't understand how hard you've worked, how much you've sacrificed. They don't see the emotional side of you, the way you care about what you're building. Musk's throat tightened as he considered her words. It wasn't just the trial that had him on edge, it was the realization that his relentless pursuit of greatness had come at a personal cost. He had sacrificed relationships, sleep, and his peace of mind for the sake of his vision. But in the courtroom, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the narrative the world was ready to write about him. "I just don't know how to explain it to them," he said quietly. "To the judge, to the investors. They think I'm out of control. But they don't get that I'm just trying to do something that matters. I'm trying to make a real difference, and this whole thing, this lawsuit, it's just a distraction. But it's so much more than that. It's personal." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Tallulah was trying to figure out how to support him, how to provide him with the reassurance he needed. Finally, she spoke. "Elon, you can't let them define you. You've done things that no one else has even dared to imagine. You've built things that will outlast all of this. But you have to stay true to who you are. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. The world needs you as you are, not as they want you to be." Her words hit Musk like a revelation. It wasn't just about defending himself in court. It was about staying grounded in his values, about staying true to the very thing that had made him successful, his ability to think differently, to dream big, and to act on those dreams. That night, as Musk hung up the phone and sat in the quiet of his office, something within him shifted. The battle he was fighting in the courtroom was no longer just a legal battle. It was a battle for his identity, for the way the world saw him. He couldn't afford to back down or let the pressure break him. He had to find a way to win, not just for Tesla, not just for himself, but for every person who had ever believed in him. The next morning, Musk walked into the courtroom with a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about the tweets, the stock market, or the technicalities of the law. It was about showing the world that he was more than just a headline or a controversial figure. He was someone who had dedicated his life to pushing humanity forward, even when it meant taking risks that others wouldn't dare to take. As Judge Stone called the court to order, Musk knew that this day could be the turning point. The defense had prepared for a major revelation, but it wasn't going to come from a legal loophole or a technicality. It would come from Musk himself. "Your Honor," Musk began, his voice steady and clear, "I've been thinking a lot about this case and about what it represents. I've always known that my approach to business isn't conventional, but I've also always believed that we can change the world by doing things differently. When I made that tweet, it wasn't about misleading anyone. It was about trying to spark something bigger than myself. I know now that I could have communicated it better, but I didn't expect the world to react the way it did. And I take responsibility for that. But I also know this, I'm not the first person to push boundaries, and I won't be the last. What matters is how we learn from our mistakes and keep moving forward." There was a stillness in the room. For a moment, it seemed as though everyone was waiting for the next word to fall from Musk's lips. He was opening himself up, not just to the court, but to the world. He was laying bare his vulnerabilities, showing the side of him that few ever got to see. "It's easy to judge from the outside," Musk continued, his voice more personal now. "But when you're in the trenches, when you're trying to build something from nothing, you take risks. Sometimes those risks don't pay off, but you keep going. Because that's how you make a difference." The emotional weight of Musk's words settled over the courtroom, and even Judge Stone's usually stern demeanor softened just a fraction. She had heard many speeches, many apologies, but something about Musk's sincerity seemed to resonate with her. For the first time in the trial, the walls between Elon Musk and Judge Charlotte Stone seemed to crack just a little. This wasn't a man trying to escape responsibility. This was a man showing that he understood the stakes of what he had done and was willing to own it, flaws and all. Musk wasn't just fighting for his reputation anymore. He was fighting for redemption, for the chance to prove that he could be both a visionary and someone who took responsibility for his actions. And in that moment, as he stood before the judge and the world, he knew that no matter how the case turned out, he had already won something far more important, his integrity. The days following Elon Musk's emotional testimony were filled with a heightened sense of anticipation. The courtroom buzzed with the usual back and forth between the defense and the prosecution, but for those who had been watching closely, something had shifted. Elon Musk had done something that few would have expected. He had shown vulnerability. It wasn't just a matter of legal tactics anymore, it was about the deeper motivations that had driven him for years, and the human side of the man who had reshaped industries. Elon had expected the backlash, the scrutiny, the criticism. But what surprised him was the overwhelming support from an unexpected place: his employees, his fans, and even the people who had once doubted him. Word had spread quickly about his courtroom speech, and social media was flooded with messages of encouragement. Some even called it a turning point, not just in the trial, but in how the public saw him. No longer was he just the tech mogul with wild ideas and even wilder ambition, he was now someone who had faced the consequences of his actions, reflected on them, and admitted his faults. The trial entered its final phase, and Musk's legal team could sense the change in the air. It wasn't about getting a victory in the traditional sense anymore, it was about making sure the world understood who he was, beyond the media narratives that had often painted him as reckless or out of touch. The closing arguments were near, and the strategy had shifted toward one clear message: accountability, leadership, and vision. On the final day of the trial, Judge Charlotte Stone called the court to order. Her demeanor was as composed as ever, but even she couldn't ignore the emotional undercurrent that had been building throughout the case. For all her skepticism about Musk's business methods, she couldn't deny that he had done something few others would have dared: he had stood up, not just for himself, but for his vision, for the larger purpose that had propelled him to where he was today. "Mr. Musk," Judge Stone began, addressing him with a note of formality, "you have been through a great deal in this courtroom. The question now is whether you have provided sufficient evidence to convince this court that your actions were not in violation of securities laws, and whether your conduct should be forgiven, given the context of your intentions." Musk took a deep breath, his hands resting on the table in front of him. It had all come down to this moment. He wasn't here to escape punishment, nor was he here to claim innocence. He was here to be understood. To be seen, not as a villain, but as someone who had always believed in the power of innovation, even if that belief had led him astray. "Your Honor," Musk began, his voice steady but calm, "I've always believed that to truly make a difference in this world, you have to be willing to take risks. And sometimes, those risks result in mistakes. I won't deny that my actions had consequences. I'm not here to excuse them, but I hope you'll understand the spirit in which they were made. I didn't make that tweet as a way to mislead anyone, I made it because I truly believed in the possibility of something greater for Tesla and for the future of clean energy. I understand now how the message was unclear, and how it led to confusion and uncertainty. But I've learned from this, and I will continue to work harder to ensure that my actions align with the trust that investors, employees, and the public place in me." Musk's words were sincere, and there was no trace of defensiveness in his tone. He wasn't just defending his vision for the future, he was reflecting on how it had affected the lives of those around him. His legacy wasn't just about building companies or achieving success, it was about the responsibility he had to those who believed in him. After a moment that felt like an eternity, Judge Stone spoke again. "Mr. Musk, while the law is clear and the consequences of your actions cannot be overlooked, the court acknowledges that you have shown remorse and have taken steps to rectify the situation. The complexity of your business and the innovation you are leading cannot be ignored. However, accountability remains paramount." She paused, as if contemplating her final decision. "In light of the circumstances and your testimony, the court will impose a penalty, but it will be accompanied by a requirement for you to demonstrate further efforts to ensure transparency and communication with your investors moving forward. Additionally, you are to make a public statement of clarification regarding your tweet, to avoid any further confusion." A collective sigh seemed to ripple through the room. The verdict was delivered. It wasn't an acquittal, but it wasn't a full-scale condemnation either. Elon Musk had been held accountable for his actions, but the court recognized his unique position in the world of innovation. It was a compromise, a resolution that allowed him to continue his work without being bogged down by the full force of the legal system. Walking out of the courtroom, Musk took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past weeks lifting off his shoulders. The battle was over, but the lessons learned would stay with him forever. He had faced his critics, his doubts, and his own mistakes, and had emerged stronger for it. The media would likely continue to scrutinize his every move. But Musk was undeterred. As he stepped into the bright sunlight outside the courthouse, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The world was still waiting for the next big thing. And he was ready to give it to them. Later that evening, as he sat in his office reflecting on the trial's outcome, Musk smiled to himself. He had been tested, and he had grown from it. The world may never fully understand him, but that didn't matter. He wasn't in this for the approval of others. He was in it to change the world. And with that thought, he turned his attention back to the future that, for him, had always been the next big leap forward. As the trial closed and the weight of the past few weeks began to dissipate, Elon Musk found a sense of clarity. His journey, though filled with obstacles, was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And this time, he would be even more determined to succeed, not just for himself, but for the world that depended on his vision. The end of the trial wasn't the end of the story, it was simply the start of the next great adventure. And Musk knew that no matter what came next, he would always keep moving forward. The days after the trial were a blur for Elon Musk. The courtroom drama had come to a close, but the reverberations were felt in every corner of his world. The media buzzed with headlines, some supportive, others critical, but for Musk, the real work had just begun. The weight of the decision hung over him like a storm cloud, but it wasn't the judgment itself that kept him up at night, it was the responsibility to continue leading, innovating, and proving that the world needed the vision he had set into motion years ago. Musk had always been a man of action. In the face of adversity, he wasn't one to retreat. Instead, he channeled his energy into his next mission. The headlines would fade, but his companies would continue their forward march. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company, all required his attention, his creativity, and most of all, his leadership. Despite the setback, Musk knew he had an obligation to the people who worked tirelessly alongside him, the engineers, designers, and thinkers who believed in his vision. They had trusted him during his darkest days, and he wasn't about to let them down now. But first, he needed a moment to reflect, to ensure he was ready for what lay ahead. That weekend, Elon decided to visit one of his favorite places, the SpaceX launch facility in Cape Canaveral. It was a place where dreams were made, where boundaries were pushed beyond the stars. He had been so immersed in the courtroom battle that he hadn't had a chance to focus on the future of SpaceX in recent weeks, and the upcoming mission needed his full attention. The crew had been preparing for a test launch of the new Starship prototype, a project Musk had long believed would be the key to making humanity a multiplanetary species. The stakes couldn't be higher. As Musk walked through the familiar halls of the SpaceX facility, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The energy of the engineers, scientists, and astronauts around him was palpable. They had always believed in the impossible, just as he did. And as the countdown to the test launch began, Musk could feel the weight of his vision lifting. This was what he had fought for, this was the future. Standing at the control center, he looked out at the massive rocket on the launch pad, ready for its test flight. The team gathered around him, eyes focused on the screens and data feeds as they prepared for liftoff. There was a sense of quiet anticipation in the room, as if they were all part of something bigger than themselves. Musk, despite the chaos that had unfolded in the courtroom, felt peace. This was his element. "Everything's looking good," one of the engineers said, checking the data feed for the final time. "We're on schedule." Musk nodded, his attention fixed on the rocket. "Let's make history," he said simply, his voice calm and confident. As the countdown reached 0, the rocket surged upward, leaving the launch pad in a massive cloud of smoke and flame. The crowd in the control room erupted in cheers as the Starship ascended, cutting through the sky on its way to the stars. For Musk, the sight was a reminder of why he had chosen this path, a path of constant risk, constant innovation, and relentless pursuit of the impossible. But even as the rocket disappeared into the sky, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that his personal journey was far from over. The trial had shown him that, despite all his successes, there was still a lot to learn about himself. It had forced him to face the hard truths of leadership, the need for balance, for humility, and for clarity in communication. He had always been driven by the idea that he was here to change the world, but the trial had made him realize that to truly succeed, he also needed to lead with integrity and transparency. As the test launch successfully completed its mission and the team celebrated their achievement, Musk took a moment to step outside. He walked alone toward the edge of the facility, gazing out over the launch pad as the sun began to set. There was something about that moment that filled him with a profound sense of peace. He had faced the trials of the courtroom, but here, in this place, he was reminded of what really mattered. He pulled out his phone and looked at the messages that had flooded in over the past few days. The news of the trial verdict had been picked up by outlets around the world, but among the flood of articles, there were messages from people he hadn't heard from in years. Some were congratulatory, others reflective, and a few even reached out with words of encouragement. A few texts stood out more than the others, and he clicked on one from his brother, Kimball Musk. "Sometimes we lose sight of what really matters," Kimball's message read. "But you've always found your way back. Keep going. You've got this." Elon smiled softly to himself. Kimball had always been there for him, through thick and thin, and it was comforting to know that, despite everything, the people closest to him still had his back. The next morning, Elon returned to Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto, where his team was eagerly awaiting his return. There was no time to rest, no time to bask in the glow of the successful rocket launch. The mission at Tesla was ever present, the development of the next generation of electric vehicles and the continuation of their sustainable energy initiatives. Musk knew he couldn't afford to lose focus. The work was more important than ever. But there was a difference now. He had emerged from the trial with a deeper understanding of himself and his role as a leader. He had faced the chaos, the legal battles, and the media storms, and had come out the other side more determined than ever to continue pushing boundaries. As he sat down with his team, ready to dive back into the plans for Tesla's next big release, Musk realized that the road ahead wasn't just about innovation, it was about balance. The world was watching him more closely than ever, and the pressure was immense. But he had learned an important lesson in the past few weeks: true leadership wasn't just about making bold moves, it was about being accountable, being transparent, and learning from mistakes. The future would be built on those values. "All right, team," Musk said, looking around at the eager faces of the engineers and designers in front of him. "We've got work to do. Let's change the world." And with that, Elon Musk took his first step forward, not just as a businessman, but as a man who had faced his own shortcomings and emerged with a clearer vision for the future. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges and victories, but one thing was certain: he would face it with the same determination that had gotten him this far, and with the lessons learned from the trial to guide him. The road ahead was long, but Musk was ready for whatever came next. The weeks following Elon Musk's trial verdict were filled with an overwhelming sense of both relief and determination. The media had moved on, but the echo of the case still reverberated in Musk's world. He had faced the storm, weathered it, and emerged on the other side, but the ripple effect of the trial was far from over. His actions, his words, and the legal consequences would continue to shape how he approached his ventures and how others viewed him. Within the walls of Tesla, the atmosphere was both tense and electric. The leadership team was more focused than ever, aware that the company's future was at a crossroads. Musk's legal battle had distracted him for months, but now he was back, and everyone knew that the path ahead was filled with challenges Musk had never shied away from. But there was something different in the air, a renewed sense of purpose that had ignited the room. Musk had weathered a personal storm, but the true test was whether he could lead Tesla through the next phase of its growth. Sitting in his office, Musk stared out at the bustling Tesla campus. Engineers and designers moved briskly between buildings, their eyes trained on the future. But his thoughts were still tied to the trial. Although the court had reached a decision, there was still unfinished business, unfinished in the form of his personal growth. The legal consequences had been one thing, but what about the larger impact on his relationships, his companies, and his own sense of purpose? For the first time, Musk had been forced to confront the reality that leadership wasn't just about innovation. It was about managing relationships, communicating effectively, and staying grounded in a world that constantly demanded more. As much as he had always believed in pushing the envelope, he had learned the hard way that unchecked ambition could sometimes lead to missteps. The trial was a wake-up call, a reminder that, even for someone like him, the road to success was not always linear. The phone on his desk rang, breaking his train of thought. He picked it up and immediately heard the voice of his Tesla COO, Jerome Guillen. "Hey, Elon, we've got an update on the new Model S production," Jerome said, his tone a mix of excitement and urgency. "The team is ready to start ramping up production. But we need your input on a few key design tweaks before we go full throttle." Musk sat up straight. The Model S was one of Tesla's most iconic vehicles, and the next iteration had to be perfect. It wasn't just about the car, it was about the future of the electric vehicle market, the technology, and the global movement toward sustainable energy. This was a defining moment for Tesla. "I'll be there in 10, Musk said, hanging up the phone. He didn't need to think twice. This was where his focus needed to be. There were no more distractions. The trial had come and gone, and now it was time to get back to what he did best, shaping the future. Within minutes, Musk was in the Tesla design studio, surrounded by engineers and designers who were eagerly awaiting his arrival. The energy in the room was palpable, the air thick with the promise of something groundbreaking. "All right, show me what you've got," Musk said, his voice steady but full of expectation. The team gathered around a large screen, showcasing a 3D model of the new Model S. Musk studied it intently, his mind working through the design in real time. He picked up on details the average person would overlook, the lines of the body, the aerodynamics, the integration of new battery technology. Tesla wasn't just making a car, they were designing a piece of the future. "I like it," Musk said after a long pause. "But we can push it further. I want to see a sleeker profile, more aggressive aerodynamics. Let's rethink the battery placement for better weight distribution. And the interior, we need a more immersive user experience. This car has to feel like the future. It can't just be a car, it has to be a piece of art." The team nodded, taking notes as Musk continued to articulate his vision. It wasn't just about the technical details, it was about creating something that would leave an indelible mark on the world. Every decision Musk made, every move he took, was tied to that singular goal, to change the world through sustainable technology. As the meeting wrapped up, Musk couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Despite everything that had happened in the courtroom, this was where he truly belonged. The challenges ahead were daunting, but they were challenges he knew he could overcome. The world was watching, but Musk had always thrived under pressure. In many ways, the trial had served as a reminder of why he did what he did in the first place, to push boundaries, to take risks, and to build a future that others couldn't even imagine. Later that day, Musk received another call, this time from Gwynne Shotwell, the president of SpaceX. The latest mission to Mars was on track, and the team was preparing for a key milestone in the Starship program. Musk had always believed that SpaceX was his greatest legacy, his chance to help humanity become a multiplanetary species. But after the trial, he was more determined than ever to make sure that SpaceX succeeded, not just for him, but for the future of Earth. "Hey, Gwynne," Musk said, answering the call. "What's the latest?" "We're on schedule for the next orbital test," Gwynne replied. "The team's making great progress, but we need to make sure we have everything in place for a smooth launch. We've got a few regulatory hoops to jump through, but I think we're ready to go. It's a big step forward." "Good," Musk said, his tone sharp and decisive. Let's make sure we get it right. Mars isn't waiting. The conversation shifted to technical details, and Musk's mind was already racing through the various scenarios that could play out during the launch. He had learned long ago to never underestimate the challenges of space exploration. Every launch was a calculated risk, but it was a risk that could change the course of human history. As the call ended, Musk felt the weight of his responsibilities. The trial had been a reminder that even the most successful entrepreneurs had to face consequences for their actions. But it had also given him a new sense of clarity. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a leader with a mission, someone who had the power to change the world in ways few could ever imagine. The road ahead would be difficult, but Musk had always been prepared for that. He was ready to push forward, to innovate, and to lead his companies through whatever challenges came next. In the end, the trial had shown Musk something vital, that he could fall, but he could always rise again. And rise he would, higher than ever before. The journey wasn't over, it had only just begun. As autumn settled over California, Elon Musk found himself at the crossroads of multiple worlds. His mind was constantly racing, but now, something within him had shifted. The trial had forced him to confront his vulnerabilities, and in doing so, it sparked a reawakening, a renewed sense of focus and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. Musk had always been driven by his grand vision, but now, he was more aware than ever of the importance of the people who stood with him on this journey. The courtroom had stripped him bare, forcing him to acknowledge the flaws in his methods, his communication, and his leadership style. But it had also provided an invaluable lesson in resilience and clarity. Musk now understood that he needed to evolve, not just as an entrepreneur but as a person. The stakes had never been higher, but there was a quiet strength that came from knowing where he had gone wrong and understanding what had to change. A few weeks after the verdict, Musk sat at his desk at SpaceX, the usual flurry of activity happening around him. Engineers and astronauts moved through the halls, preparing for their next mission to Mars. But Musk had never been more focused. He had committed himself to making not just technical innovations, but leadership innovations, too. Gwynne Shotwell, the president of SpaceX, walked into his office with a stack of reports in hand. She looked serious, as always, but there was a certain determination in her eyes that mirrored his own. "Gwynne, what's up?" Musk asked, glancing up from his screen. "We've got a few things we need to review before the Mars mission launch. The rocket's set, but I need your input on a few strategy changes. The team's been working hard, but we could use a final review on certain elements of the crew training protocols. It's going to be a high-pressure situation, and I want to make sure the crew is fully prepared for every possible outcome." Musk leaned back in his chair, thinking carefully. "I've been giving it a lot of thought. We've always focused on pushing boundaries, on launching new tech, new rockets. But this mission to Mars isn't just about innovation. It's about getting humanity to a point where we can be truly multiplanetary. That means not just testing the rocket, but testing the people, our ability to work under pressure, adapt, and handle unexpected challenges. We can't afford to leave anything to chance." Gwynne nodded. "Exactly. The emotional and mental readiness of the crew is just as important as the technical side. We've pushed hard for innovation in the past, but now we're looking at something entirely different, taking that vision and making sure we're prepared for the real-world consequences of that vision." Musk stood up from his desk and moved to the window, looking out over the SpaceX campus. It's easy to get caught up in the tech, in the rockets and the numbers. But if we're going to make it to Mars, if we're going to lead humanity into the future, we need to be ready for the psychological weight of that mission. The mental load that will come with being pioneers on another planet. Gwynne watched him closely, noting the shift in his demeanor. Elon Musk had always been intense, but there was a quiet calm to him now, a clarity in his thinking that she hadn't seen before. She knew that he had been deeply affected by the trial, and it was clear that something had changed within him. "I think we need to take the crew through simulated real-world scenarios, including failure," Musk continued. We need to prepare them for the worst-case scenarios, not just the ideal outcomes. Space exploration isn't just about reaching the stars. It's about overcoming the challenges that come with it. Gwyn smiled. You're absolutely right. Let's make sure we're fully prepared for all possibilities. As the meeting continued, Elon felt something within him click into place. The trial may have been a painful experience, but it had led him to this moment, a deeper understanding of what it meant to be a leader, a visionary, and someone who had the power to bring about real, lasting change. After Gwyn left his office, Musk took a deep breath and walked out into the SpaceX facility. He watched the engineers working, their eyes glued to the screens, their hands typing furiously at their keyboards. This was the team that would take humanity to Mars. And Musk knew that, in a way, this mission was as much about them as it was about him. It was about leadership, trust, and the willingness to confront failure head-on. That night, back at his Tesla office, Musk found himself reflecting on how far he had come. The previous months had been a blur of courtroom drama, legal battles, and media scrutiny. But now, it was time to focus on what lay ahead. Tesla's innovations were on the brink of revolutionizing the automobile industry, and he couldn't afford to lose sight of that. The next model was nearing release, and Musk was determined to ensure that it wasn't just a car, it would be a statement. A symbol of the future, powered by sustainable energy. A text message popped up on his phone from Kimball Musk, his brother. Hey, you doing okay? Been thinking about you a lot lately. Let's catch up soon. I know things have been tough, but you've always had the strength to keep going. Elon smiled at the message. Kimball had always been his rock. Let's talk tomorrow, Elon replied. I've got some new ideas. I need your perspective. The weight of his responsibilities was undeniable. The trial had been a reminder of just how high the stakes were, how much he had to lose. But it had also been a wake-up call. Musk understood now that leadership wasn't just about making big decisions and taking bold actions. It was about being there for those who depended on you, listening when they needed you, and guiding them through the challenges ahead. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. Musk knew that. But he was ready. More than ready. He had learned from his mistakes, understood his own limitations, and emerged stronger for it. The next morning, Elon Musk found himself standing at the front of a large conference room at Tesla headquarters. The room was filled with engineers, designers, and executives, people who had worked alongside him for years, people who believed in the vision he had set forth. All right, everyone, Musk began, his voice steady, clear, and unwavering. We're not just here to build cars. We're here to build the future. And that future starts today. We're going to take everything we've learned, every mistake we've made, and turn it into something that will change the world. This is about more than just innovation. It's about leadership. It's about trust. And it's about the people who believe in our vision. He paused, looking around the room. The faces staring back at him were filled with anticipation, excitement, and a shared sense of purpose. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. But we're ready. Let's get to it. And with that, Elon Musk knew he had taken his first step into a new phase of his journey, a journey that would not only change the world but would forever redefine what it meant to be a visionary leader. The ripple effect of the trial was still there, but Musk was no longer drowning in its wake. Instead, he was learning to ride the waves, stronger, more focused, and more determined than ever before. The road ahead would be long, but Musk was ready to lead his companies and humanity into the future. Despite his newfound clarity and focus, the pressure on Elon Musk was far from over. The world was watching his every move, more closely than ever before. His recent legal troubles had drawn public attention in ways he hadn't expected. While Musk was no stranger to controversy, the trial had made him more conscious of the fragility of public opinion. Even his staunchest supporters now questioned his judgment, and critics were eager to see his next misstep. At SpaceX, the tension was palpable. The Mars mission was on track, but new developments and changes in the political climate were putting pressure on the project. The demands for transparency from both governmental agencies and the public were reaching new heights. Space exploration was no longer just a matter of science and engineering, it had become a highly politicized issue, with each rocket launch carrying the weight of national pride and political scrutiny. Meanwhile, at Tesla, there was a similar undercurrent of doubt. The industry was changing rapidly, with competitors launching their own electric vehicle models, some of which were threatening Tesla's market dominance. Musk had always thrived on competition, but the stakes were higher now, and he couldn't afford to let any cracks appear in his leadership. On a crisp October morning, Musk sat alone in his office, reflecting on the weight of the situation. His teams at both Tesla and SpaceX were top tier, but Musk knew that if he was to truly succeed in the years ahead, he had to maintain his focus and avoid the pitfalls of overextending himself. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Kimball Musk. "You okay? You've been quiet lately. Thinking about you. Let's meet up soon. Family time." Elon smiled at the message. His brother had always been the grounding force in his life. Kimball never sugar-coated anything. He was Elon's constant reminder of what truly mattered: family, relationships, and being present. Elon quickly typed back, "I'll be in touch soon. We need to catch up. It's been a crazy ride lately." He set the phone down and leaned back in his chair, staring at the wall of windows that overlooked the Tesla campus. The company had grown exponentially, but with growth came complexity. He needed to reassert his leadership and remind everyone, employees, investors, the public, that Tesla was still the leader in electric vehicles. That was his core belief, and he wasn't about to let anyone take that away. A few days later, Elon made his way to the Tesla factory in Fremont, California. The noise of the assembly line was familiar and comforting, but today it felt different. The buzz of conversation, the hum of machines, and the scent of freshly painted cars, it all seemed to be happening around him, not for him. Musk had always been the visionary, the man who pushed his team to break barriers, but today, it was as if the weight of the world had shifted to his shoulders. He walked past several workers who were fine-tuning a new electric sedan, and his eyes followed the intricate details of the vehicle's design. The car was beautiful, futuristic, and bold, but Musk couldn't shake the nagging sense that something was missing. It wasn't the car itself, it was something deeper. His sense of urgency had always been his driving force, but now, in this factory, surrounded by the hum of machines and the speed of production, it felt as though time itself was slipping away. "Hey, Elon," came a voice from behind him. It was Franz von Holthausen, Tesla's chief designer, with a smile on his face. "How's it going? We've made some updates to the prototype. Come see what we've done." Franz led Musk to a table where the new model sat, its sleek lines and aerodynamic shape strikingly advanced. As Musk examined the car, Franz's enthusiasm was infectious. "This is great, Franz," Musk said, his voice steady but not as enthusiastic as he'd hoped. "But we need to do better. We need to push harder. The market is catching up to us, and if we're not leading, we're losing." Franz raised an eyebrow, surprised by the intensity in Musk's voice. "We're doing everything we can, Elon. This car is miles ahead of anything the competition has right now." Musk nodded slowly, but there was a subtle shift in his expression. He wasn't convinced. There was a familiar anxiety in his chest, the kind he'd felt before a big breakthrough, but this time it felt different. It felt as though he was standing at the edge of something, uncertain whether he was about to leap or fall. He spent the rest of the day walking the factory floor, talking to engineers and workers, trying to shake the feeling of doubt that was slowly creeping in. Everywhere he turned, he was reminded of the challenge at hand: how to lead a company that was evolving, adapting, and growing at an unprecedented pace. Tesla was the face of the electric revolution, but could he keep it ahead of the curve? That evening, after the factory visit, Elon returned to his office. He needed a moment to think, to process everything. The weight of his responsibilities was mounting, and he had to find a way to silence the doubts in his mind. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across his desk, Musk's phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello," he answered, his voice more clipped than he intended. "Mr. Musk," came a deep, calm voice on the other end. "This is Judge Olivia Holt. I'm calling to discuss your request for a meeting. I know we haven't spoken since the trial, but there are some matters we need to address." Musk's heart skipped a beat. Judge Holt. He hadn't expected to hear from her again. After everything that had happened in the courtroom, the idea of speaking with her felt strange, almost like a ghost from his past. "Judge Holt," Musk replied, clearing his throat. "I didn't expect to hear from you. What can I help you with?" "I have a few questions regarding some of the information that came to light during the trial. I know you've moved on, but I believe there are some unresolved issues that could impact both your future ventures and the public perception of your companies." Musk's mind raced. This conversation could change everything. The trial had been tough, but there was no way he was going to let this situation derail his progress now. "Let's meet," he said, his voice firm. "We can discuss this further." As he ended the call, Musk couldn't help but wonder what had prompted the judge to reach out now. The doubts were still there, lingering in the back of his mind. Would this conversation help put those doubts to rest, or would it open new wounds that he wasn't prepared to face? One thing was for certain, Elon Musk's journey had only just begun. And no matter how many shadows of doubt he faced, he would continue pushing forward, ever determined to change the world. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? When the time for the meeting arrived, Musk walked into the sleek conference room at Tesla's headquarters. The glass walls provided a panoramic view of the facility, where engineers worked tirelessly on the next generation of electric vehicles. For a brief moment, the beauty of his surroundings reminded him of how far he had come, how much Tesla had grown from its humble beginnings. But then, the door opened, and in walked Judge Olivia Holt. She was tall, composed, and exuded an air of authority. The same authority she had wielded in the courtroom. Her presence was enough to command the room without a word. Her sharp eyes locked onto Musk's as she walked in, her steps deliberate and purposeful. Musk couldn't help but notice the subtle shift in her demeanor since the trial. She seemed more approachable now, her usual sternness replaced by an almost inscrutable calm. "Mr. Musk," she greeted him, her voice steady but with a hint of warmth, something he hadn't expected. "It's good to see you again." "Judge Holt," Musk responded, extending his hand for a handshake. "I wasn't expecting you to reach out. What's this about?" She took a seat across from him, folding her hands neatly in front of her. "I understand that this may seem unusual. However, after the trial, I felt there were matters left unresolved, not just in the legal sense but in a broader context. Your case sparked a series of questions about leadership, ethics, and responsibility, not just in the business world, but in society as a whole." Elon shifted in his seat, his mind already racing. The words leadership, ethics, and responsibility immediately caught his attention. These were themes he had been grappling with for months, especially after the intense scrutiny he had faced in the courtroom. "What kind of matters are we talking about here?" Musk asked, his voice steady, though he couldn't suppress the curiosity creeping into his tone. "I believe you've learned a great deal from the trial, Elon," Holt said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "But there's more at play here. You've been a symbol of innovation for so long, but the world needs to see more than just that. The world needs to understand that innovation and responsibility can coexist. Your companies, your vision, they are shaping the future, yes. But so much of what you do has an impact on the people you lead, the communities you affect, and the world at large. There's power in what you've built. And with that power comes the weight of responsibility." Musk listened intently, his mind spinning with the implications of her words. It was true, he had always been focused on the end goal, on the grand vision of making life multiplanetary, of creating sustainable energy solutions. But had he truly understood the full scope of his responsibility? Had he ever truly considered the consequences of his decisions on the people who followed him? The judge continued, "Your approach to business, to leadership, has often been about pushing boundaries, about doing what others think is impossible. But you've had your share of missteps along the way. I'm not here to criticize you for that, no one is perfect. What I want to discuss is how you're going to move forward. How you plan to lead, not just with brilliance but with wisdom." The room was quiet for a long moment. Elon's mind churned with the weight of her words. She was right, of course. He had always pushed forward with relentless drive, but he'd never been one to pause and reflect on the ethical or personal dimensions of his decisions. In the fast-paced world of innovation, reflection was often seen as a luxury. But now, he saw that it was a necessity. "Are you suggesting that I need to change my approach?" Musk asked, his voice low but filled with the hint of challenge. "I've always believed in taking risks, in breaking through barriers. I've done things others thought were impossible, and I'm not about to stop now." Holt leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "I'm not suggesting that you stop taking risks. I'm suggesting that you take a different kind of risk. The kind that considers the long-term impact of your actions, not just the success or failure of the venture. When you push the boundaries of technology, you must also push the boundaries of your own leadership. A true visionary sees both the opportunities and the consequences." Musk exhaled slowly, his mind racing. It wasn't that he didn't understand her point, he did. He just hadn't fully internalized it until now. In his pursuit of grand goals, he had often overlooked the emotional and ethical dimensions of leadership. Now, the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had to evolve, or risk losing everything he had worked for. "Okay," Musk said, his voice quieter now. "So what do you suggest?" Judge Holt smiled slightly, a knowing look in her eyes. "It's not about suggestions, Elon. It's about decisions. How you decide to use the power you've gained, the platform you've built. How you choose to influence the world, not just through your innovations but through your actions, your values, and your leadership." The conversation shifted after that, with Elon asking questions about governance, responsibility, and the long-term implications of his ventures. Judge Holt, in turn, shared her thoughts on leadership, on how true power came not from the ability to command but from the ability to serve and elevate others. When the meeting ended, Musk felt a strange sense of peace. It was as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He had a clear path forward, but it was a different kind of path than the one he had been walking. One that required not just brilliance, but wisdom. As Elon watched Judge Holt leave the room, he knew that their conversation had marked a turning point in his life. He had been given a gift, a fresh perspective on leadership, on responsibility, and on how to navigate the future. It was a challenge he couldn't ignore, no matter how difficult it might be. For the first time in a long while, Elon Musk felt the weight of his decisions settle onto his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a call to action. Later that evening, Elon sat at his desk, his mind still buzzing with everything he had learned from Judge Holt. He was ready to take on the future, but now, he knew that he would need to do so with a deeper sense of purpose, a commitment to not just innovation, but to leading with integrity. He pulled up a blank document on his computer screen and began to type. New Vision Statement, Reimagining Leadership in the 21st Century. Elon Musk sat in front of his computer, staring at the blank document that now held a newfound sense of significance. For years, his life had been a whirlwind of innovation, of breaking down barriers and challenging the status quo. His companies, SpaceX, Tesla, and the others, were all built on this very principle: do what others say can't be done. But now, after his conversation with Judge Olivia Holt, he was starting to question the core of his leadership. It wasn't enough to simply create revolutionary products or push technology forward, he needed to understand the broader implications of his actions. He needed a new vision, one that wasn't just about changing the world with rockets and electric cars, but about changing the very nature of leadership itself. He wasn't sure where to begin, but he knew that he had to redefine what it meant to be a leader in the modern age. What did leadership look like in a world that was increasingly interconnected, increasingly transparent, and where every action had the potential to ripple across the globe? Musk took a deep breath and began typing. Leadership in the 21st century isn't just about innovation. It's about responsibility. It's about understanding the long-term impact of our decisions, not just on our companies, but on the people, the planet, and the generations to come. He paused and read the words. They felt right. It was a step towards something deeper, something that required introspection, humility, and a willingness to evolve. His mind began to wander as he typed. The pressure of leading these companies, the responsibility of steering SpaceX toward Mars, the responsibility of leading Tesla through an ever-changing automotive industry, had often clouded his ability to reflect on the broader picture. Now, with this new clarity, he understood that he couldn't just see the world as a series of problems to be solved. He had to see it as a complex web of consequences, all interconnected. He continued writing. We must innovate, but we must innovate responsibly. We must not forget that technology, no matter how advanced, has a profound impact on humanity. Every decision we make must be informed by this reality. Progress must always be balanced with purpose. Musk leaned back in his chair, taking a moment to absorb the weight of what he had just written. This wasn't just a vision statement for his companies, this was a personal manifesto. It was his new guiding principle. For the next hour, he typed steadily, refining his thoughts, reshaping his leadership philosophy. He wrote about the importance of listening, truly listening, to those around him. He wrote about collaboration, about being transparent and open in a way he hadn't been before. He wrote about humility, the need to accept that he didn't have all the answers and that there was strength in seeking wisdom from others. When he finally finished, he looked at the document on the screen and felt a sense of calm. It was time to move forward. The world had changed, and so had he. He needed to make sure that everything he did from this point onward would align with this new understanding of leadership. But what would that look like in practice? What was the next step? Musk had always been a man of action. He couldn't just sit back and let this new vision sit idly on a screen. He needed to implement it, to show the world that he was serious about this shift in mindset. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings, calls, and late-night brainstorming sessions. Musk began outlining new leadership strategies for both SpaceX and Tesla, strategies that emphasize transparency, collaboration, and a stronger focus on ethics and social responsibility. He also set up a series of workshops for his executive teams, where they would discuss these principles and how they could integrate them into their everyday operations. At Tesla, for instance, he pushed for even more transparency in the production process. He wanted customers to see where their cars were being built, how they were being built, and under what conditions. He wanted to create a new standard for corporate responsibility, one where sustainability and human rights were considered just as important as profit margins. At SpaceX, Musk took a similar approach. He pushed his engineers and scientists to think beyond just sending rockets into space. They had to think about the environmental impact of space travel and how they could minimize their carbon footprint. Musk also started organizing public Q&A sessions, where he would address not just the technical aspects of their missions but also the ethical considerations of space exploration. After all, SpaceX was on a mission to reach Mars, an endeavor that could have massive implications for the future of humanity. But the most significant shift came within himself. Musk began to open up more to his teams, acknowledging his past mistakes and asking for their input on the direction he was taking. He began listening more, really listening, to the voices of those around him, especially those who had been with him from the beginning. Kimball Musk, his brother and closest confidant, was one of the first to notice the change. The two sat down over lunch one afternoon, and Kimball could sense the shift in Elon's demeanor. He was different, more grounded, more reflective. "You're doing the right thing, Elon," Kimball said, looking at his brother thoughtfully. "It's not just about the cars or the rockets. It's about the people. And you've always known that. But now, you're leading with a bigger purpose." Elon smiled, feeling the weight of his brother's words. "I think I've been so focused on what's next, on the mission, that I've forgotten the most important part, the people who are with me on this journey. It's time to start leading in a way that makes them proud." Kimball nodded. "Just don't forget that your vision is what got you here. You can evolve, but don't lose sight of what drives you." Elon thought about that for a moment. It was true, he had always been driven by a deep sense of purpose. But now, that purpose had expanded. It was no longer just about creating revolutionary products, it was about shaping a future that was sustainable, ethical, and humane. As the weeks went by, Elon Musk's new leadership principles began to take root. His teams at SpaceX and Tesla embraced the changes, and the results were evident. Employee morale improved, customers became more engaged, and even the media began to take notice of Musk's shift in mindset. They had seen him as a maverick, a relentless innovator who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. But now, they were seeing a new side of him, the side that was willing to be vulnerable, to learn, to grow. It was still early days, and Musk knew that the road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace. He wasn't just trying to change the world anymore. He was trying to change himself, and that, he realized, was the most important change of all. Months had passed since Elon Musk began reshaping his leadership approach. His commitment to transparency, ethical leadership, and creating a more collaborative environment was beginning to take root. SpaceX and Tesla were thriving, and the public's perception of Musk was beginning to shift. He was no longer just a genius inventor, he was becoming a model of responsible leadership, the kind of leader who understood the weight of his decisions. But as with all journeys of transformation, there were moments that would test his resolve. One such moment arrived unexpectedly, as Musk sat in his private office late one evening, reading through the latest reports from SpaceX. A new project, a mission to launch a crew to Mars, was moving ahead faster than expected, but some new challenges had arisen regarding the project's environmental impact. There were concerns from the media, and even a few environmental groups had begun to speak out against the project, arguing that the resources required to send humans to Mars could be better spent addressing urgent issues on Earth. Elon had always been someone who believed in the long-term vision. The mission to make humanity a multiplanetary species was not just important, it was vital. But now, with the weight of his new leadership principles guiding him, he had to consider the larger picture. He couldn't simply disregard the concerns of those who believed that humanity's focus should remain firmly on solving the problems of Earth before venturing to another planet. Elon sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This was the kind of challenge that he had feared. Space exploration had always been his dream, but was it worth the sacrifice of more immediate and pressing issues? Could he still push forward with the Mars mission while maintaining his commitment to ethical leadership? Could he reconcile these two conflicting ideals? Before he could get lost in his thoughts, there was a knock on his door. His assistant, Sarah, entered, holding a folder in her hands. "Elon, we've just received a call from Judge Olivia Holt. She wants to meet with you as soon as possible," Sarah said, her voice measured but with an air of urgency. Elon's heart skipped a beat. He had been expecting another conversation with Judge Holt, but he hadn't anticipated this sudden urgency. It had only been a few months since their last meeting, but this time, he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. "Let her in," Musk replied, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. Within moments, Judge Holt entered the room, her presence commanding as always. There was no formal greeting this time, only a directness that told Musk this meeting was important. She walked straight to the desk, placing the folder in front of him. "I'm afraid things have taken a turn, Elon," Holt said, her voice calm but with an undercurrent of concern. "I've been following your progress with SpaceX and Tesla. Your new approach to leadership, your commitment to sustainability, and your shift toward responsible innovation, those are all positive steps. But there's something you need to face head-on. You're at a crossroads, and the decisions you make now could have serious consequences, not just for you, but for the future of your companies and, frankly, for the world." Musk looked at her, puzzled. "What exactly are you talking about?" Holt glanced at the folder on the table. "I've received word from several regulatory bodies and environmental organizations. There's increasing pressure to put a halt to the Mars mission, at least for now. They're demanding that you prioritize Earth's challenges over space exploration. There's a growing sentiment that your resources would be better served in addressing issues like climate change, poverty, and inequality, rather than reaching for the stars. They're questioning the ethics of spending billions of dollars on a Mars mission while so much of Earth is in crisis." Elon's mind raced. This wasn't unexpected, but it hit harder than he had anticipated. He had always been driven by the belief that the Mars mission was humanity's future, but now, faced with this intense criticism, he had to pause and ask himself, was he being irresponsible? "I get it," Musk said slowly, standing up from his chair and pacing around the room. "But the Mars mission is more than just a dream. It's an insurance policy for humanity. It's the next step. We can't put all our eggs in one basket. We need to become multiplanetary. The future of civilization depends on it." Holt's expression remained firm, but her voice softened. "I know, Elon. I understand the vision. But with the new leadership approach you've been cultivating, you must also consider the immediate consequences of your actions. You need to take stock of the bigger picture, not just for yourself, but for the people who are counting on you. Your responsibility goes beyond your companies, it extends to the society that supports you." Musk fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always prided himself on taking risks, on pushing forward, but this was different. This was no longer just about a grand vision for the future, it was about the world he was living in right now. "I can't just abandon everything we've worked for," Musk finally said, his voice taut with frustration. "We've already made so much progress. We're on the brink of something huge. I can't let this moment slip away." Judge Holt didn't flinch. "You don't have to abandon anything, Elon. But you have to lead with wisdom. You have to find a balance. You don't have to choose between Mars and Earth. You can work toward both. But it will require sacrifices, collaboration, and most importantly, it will require you to make difficult decisions. Sometimes, leadership isn't just about pushing forward, it's about knowing when to pull back and reassess. The world is watching you, and your next move will define the legacy you leave behind." For the first time in months, Elon felt a deep sense of doubt. He had spent years focused on one goal, Mars. It had become his singular obsession, a mission he believed would secure humanity's future. But now, faced with the consequences of his actions, he wasn't sure if the right choice was as clear as he had once believed. Judge Holt stood up and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned to face him one last time. "I know this isn't easy," she said, her tone softening. "But I believe in you, Elon. I believe you can find a way to reconcile your ambitions with the responsibility that comes with them. This is your test of character." Elon watched her leave the room, the door clicking shut behind her. The words, "test of character," echoed in his mind. He had built an empire on vision and innovation, but now he was being called to lead with wisdom and responsibility. For the first time in his life, he was unsure of his next step. He sat back down at his desk and stared at the report on Mars. The future was as uncertain as ever, but one thing was clear, the test had just begun. Elon sat in silence, his fingers lightly tapping the edge of his desk. The words of Judge Olivia Holt still echoed in his mind, "This is your test of character." His pulse quickened as he replayed the conversation, the weight of her challenge pressing heavily on him. He was used to making bold, decisive moves, but this was different. This wasn't a decision about technology, profit margins, or even the next big innovation. This was about something much deeper: his legacy, the future of humanity, and his responsibility as a leader. The Mars mission had always been his dream, a vision he had been obsessively pushing toward for years. He believed it was humanity's next great step, that the survival of the species depended on expanding beyond Earth. The thought of humanity being a multiplanetary species had driven every decision he made, every sacrifice he'd endured, and every risk he'd taken. But now, suddenly, there were voices calling for a pause, for a re-evaluation of priorities. Elon stood up and walked to the large window that looked out over the SpaceX headquarters. The night sky stretched out before him, distant stars twinkling like tiny pinpricks in the vast expanse of space. His mind wandered to the words he had written in his manifesto, about leading responsibly, about listening to the people, about balancing ambition with the needs of the present. Could he really justify launching rockets to Mars when so much was at stake here on Earth? Climate change, inequality, poverty, these were problems that needed immediate action. And yet, the vision of SpaceX, the vision of humanity's future beyond this planet, was undeniable. He didn't have an answer yet. He knew he needed time, but the pressure was mounting. Regulatory bodies were demanding answers, environmental groups were gathering strength, and his own team at SpaceX was looking to him for direction. They all trusted him, but they needed him to lead, not to waver. His phone buzzed, pulling him out of his reverie. It was an email from Kimball, his brother, subject line, "Let's talk about Mars." Elon quickly opened it. "Elon. I know what you're going through. I know how much Mars means to you. But I also know that you've always been the kind of person who looks at the long-term picture, who takes the risks that no one else will take because you see something no one else does. That being said, I think it's time we had a real conversation. I know you've always been focused on the mission to Mars, but there's something I need to remind you: sometimes, the right decision isn't the one that gets you there the fastest. The right decision is the one that ensures that the world is still here when you arrive. We've always talked about changing the world. Let's make sure we're changing it in a way that benefits everyone, not just the select few. I know you're thinking about the mission, but think about how we can do both: make progress in space while improving the world we live in. Love you, bro. Let's talk. Kimball. Elon set the phone down, staring at the words. Kimball's message struck a chord deep within him. It was always easy to get caught up in the momentum of an idea, especially one as big as Mars, but Kimball reminded him of the broader responsibility he had. There had to be a way to balance the long-term dream with the immediate needs of humanity. He couldn't sacrifice one for the other. But how? What did that balance look like? He reached for the phone again, dialing Kimball's number. The phone rang twice before Kimball picked up. "Elon, hey." "Hey," Elon replied, his voice tired. "I just read your email. You're right. I've been so focused on Mars that I've forgotten to step back and think about the bigger picture. But how do I balance these two worlds? How do I continue pushing SpaceX toward the stars while still addressing the world's pressing problems?" Kimball paused for a moment, then responded, "The first thing you have to do is stop thinking that you can't do both. You've always been someone who pushes the boundaries. You've proven that. But now, you need to do it in a way that respects the Earth and the people here. Take your resources, your innovation, and redirect them towards solving problems that affect everyone. I'm not saying stop working on Mars. I'm saying take the lessons you're learning there and apply them here." Elon mulled over Kimball's words. It was a challenge, but it wasn't impossible. He could find a way to continue working toward Mars, but he also needed to bring the same level of innovation and determination to solving issues on Earth. He had always believed that humanity could rise to meet any challenge. Maybe now, he needed to prove that. "I'm not sure what that looks like yet," Elon said, "but I think you're right. I can't lose sight of what's happening here. I've been so obsessed with the future that I've ignored the present. Exactly, Kimball replied. I know it's hard, but you've always been someone who tackles problems head-on. This is no different. Just remember, progress is about balance. And you've always found a way to make the impossible possible. Elon took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity begin to settle over him. It wasn't about abandoning his dream of Mars. It was about integrating it with his responsibility to the people on Earth. He thanked Kimball and ended the call, his mind already racing with ideas. There was a way forward, he could feel it. A way to use his resources and his companies to tackle both the future and the present, to continue building for the stars while ensuring that Earth wasn't left behind. But first, he had to face the challenge head-on. He needed to find a solution that would allow SpaceX to continue its mission without turning a blind eye to the planet's most urgent issues. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing ever was. The next morning, Elon called a meeting with his top executives at SpaceX. He needed to lay out his new direction, and he needed their support. When everyone had gathered in the conference room, Elon stood at the head of the table, his expression resolute. We're at a crossroads, Elon began, his voice steady. The Mars mission is still a top priority, but I've realized that we can't ignore the challenges we face here on Earth. We have a responsibility to both the future of humanity and the present. We're going to take a new approach. We're going to use our resources to address climate change, sustainability, and the social challenges that affect us right now. Our innovation will no longer be confined to rockets, it will extend to how we live, how we interact with our planet, and how we can use technology to solve our problems. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The room was silent, the executives exchanging uncertain glances. Elon continued, I don't expect everyone to have all the answers right away. But I need your commitment. We're going to work together to find a way to push the boundaries of what's possible, not just in space, but here on Earth. We have the power to change the world in ways we never imagined. And now, we're going to do it. The silence lingered for a moment longer before one of the engineers, a woman named Sarah, spoke up. Elon, I think we can do it. We've always been a team that thinks outside the box. This could be the challenge that defines our legacy. Elon nodded, a sense of purpose settling in. This is just the beginning. We're going to solve problems that matter. And then, we'll be ready for Mars. The room buzzed with energy as Elon Musk's words echoed through the conference room. His team, many of whom had been with him for years, could sense the shift in the air. There was something different in the way Elon was approaching this new challenge, something more grounded, yet still visionary. It was a shift that would require hard work, creativity, and a relentless pursuit of solutions. But it wasn't just about making progress in space anymore. Now, it was about making progress on Earth, too. Over the next few days, the leadership team at SpaceX worked tirelessly to lay out a roadmap for this new direction. Elon knew that achieving a balance between the groundbreaking innovation of space exploration and solving the immediate crises on Earth wasn't going to be easy. But he also knew that his companies had the potential to lead the way. One of the first meetings Elon called was with Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and COO, who had been a key player in the company's success. She had always shared his vision for space exploration, but this new challenge of Earth-centric solutions added an extra layer of complexity. Elon, Gwynne began, as they sat down in his office, I understand the new direction you want to take. But let's be clear about one thing, our primary focus must remain on Mars. That's our mission. That's where we're going. But we need to make sure that we're setting a standard for responsible innovation. I think we can integrate sustainability into every project we do. Solar power, energy efficiency, carbon-neutral technologies, let's start there. Elon nodded, appreciating Gwynne's pragmatism. Exactly. We need to be leaders in green technology. We've always pushed the limits of what's possible with rockets, but what if we start applying that same mindset to how we build and power our facilities? What if we make every SpaceX building a model of sustainable design? What if we start leading the way on electric transport and renewable energy? Gwyn looked thoughtful for a moment. You know, we could look into making our launches more environmentally friendly as well. Could we reduce emissions in our rockets? Maybe not entirely eliminate them, but at least significantly lower their carbon footprint. Elon's eyes lit up with excitement. I love that idea. Why not? His mind began to race with possibilities. We have the technology to make our rockets more efficient. We've already made advancements with the Falcon 9, but there's always room for improvement. We could invest in cleaner fuel alternatives and make sustainability a central part of our space exploration mission. Gwyn agreed. We can start small with incremental changes, but as we build momentum, we'll be able to push the boundaries even further. This could be the perfect opportunity to integrate cutting-edge technology with sustainability. Elon smiled. That's the kind of thinking I want. Let's start with our next mission. We're going to test these new ideas and make sure that every aspect of what we do reflects our commitment to both space exploration and Earth sustainability. With the first steps mapped out, Elon shifted his focus to Tesla. The electric vehicle company had always been a champion of clean energy, but Elon knew there was more to be done. He arranged a meeting with Tesla's CTO, J.B. Straubel, who had always been instrumental in driving the company's technological innovations. Elon, J.B. said as they sat down in his office, I've been thinking a lot about how we can push Tesla's mission forward. We've already made huge strides with electric vehicles, but there's so much more we can do in the realm of sustainable energy. We need to focus on energy storage solutions, both for vehicles and for homes. If we want to make a real impact on Earth's energy landscape, we need to think beyond just cars. Elon leaned in, intrigued. I like where you're going with this, JB. What if we make energy storage our next big thing? Not just for individual homes, but for entire communities. Imagine a world where homes, businesses, and even entire cities are powered by Tesla energy solutions. JB nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. And we could partner with governments and organizations worldwide to implement solar-powered grids and sustainable energy solutions that power entire neighborhoods. That's the kind of innovation that could change everything. Elon's mind raced with excitement. We could build entire communities that run on Tesla energy. Solar panels on every roof, Powerwall systems in every home, and electric vehicles charging in the driveways. It's the future of energy, and it's exactly the kind of thing we need to make Earth sustainable. As the weeks went on, Elon's vision for responsible innovation began to take shape. He made bold moves to steer both SpaceX and Tesla in a new direction, one that prioritized sustainability while still working toward the long-term goal of making humanity a multiplanetary species. Elon worked with his team to develop cleaner, more efficient technologies for both SpaceX and Tesla. He also spearheaded initiatives to create more environmentally conscious production methods and explored ways to integrate renewable energy into the fabric of his companies. The road was long, but every step forward felt like a victory. They were making real progress, and it was clear that the future of space exploration and sustainable living could coexist. However, the road ahead wasn't without its challenges. Elon knew that he couldn't make this transition alone. He needed to bring others into the fold, investors, governments, and everyday people. He needed their support if he was going to make a real difference. One afternoon, Elon was preparing for a high-stakes meeting with several influential environmental leaders and investors. The room was filled with some of the world's most powerful individuals, and Elon knew that this was his chance to build alliances that would propel his vision forward. As he walked into the conference room, he was greeted with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. The environmental leaders were particularly wary. They had heard Musk's promises before, but they had also seen the risks involved with ambitious space projects. Mr. Musk, one of the leaders, Dr. Emily Rivera, began, "we've heard a lot about your efforts in space exploration. But now, you're asking us to believe that you're shifting focus to saving the planet. Why should we trust you? What guarantees can you offer that your companies won't continue to prioritize Mars over Earth?" Elon took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment where he had to prove that he wasn't just a dreamer, he was a leader who could turn vision into reality. "I know there's skepticism," Elon began, his voice firm. "But let me be clear, the reason we explore space is to ensure a future for humanity. But that future will only exist if we take care of the planet we live on today. Space exploration and sustainability are not opposing forces, they are two sides of the same coin. The innovations we create in space will come back to Earth, and the changes we make here will give us the tools to reach new frontiers." He paused, looking around the room, meeting the eyes of each person there. "We are committed to making sure that our technologies, both in space and on Earth, serve a higher purpose, to create a future where humanity thrives, and where the planet is sustainable for generations to come. I can't do this alone, but with your support, we can make this vision a reality." The room was quiet for a moment. Dr. Rivera exchanged looks with the other leaders. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer. "I believe you, Elon. Let's see what you can do." Elon smiled, feeling a surge of determination. The road ahead would be difficult, but with this partnership, they were one step closer to a future that balanced the needs of Earth and the vision of Mars. It was time to start turning ideas into action. And with every challenge, Elon was more certain than ever that humanity's future was inextricably linked to both the stars and the planet beneath their feet. Elon walked back to his office after the meeting, his mind still buzzing from the energy in the room. The environmental leaders had agreed to back his vision, at least for now. It was a victory, but it was one that came with immense responsibility. He had gained their trust, but now he had to prove that he could deliver on the promises he'd made. He took a seat behind his desk and picked up the phone. He dialed Gwynne Shotwell's number. She picked up on the first ring. "Elon," she said, "how'd it go? Was the meeting as tense as we thought?" Elon let out a breath, leaning back in his chair. "It went well. They're on board, at least for now. But the real challenge starts now. We have to show that we can integrate sustainability into every project we do without losing sight of our Mars mission. We have to prove that the two aren't mutually exclusive." Gwynne was silent for a moment, and then she replied, "I believe we can do it, Elon. It's going to take a lot of work, but we've been here before. We've faced impossible odds and come out on top. We just need to keep pushing forward." Elon nodded, even though Gwynne couldn't see him. "You're right. But I can't help feeling like I'm caught between two worlds. The pressure is mounting on both sides. The Mars mission needs all our focus, but now Earth needs us too. I'm starting to wonder if I can keep up with both. Is it even possible to juggle it all?" Gwynne paused, choosing her words carefully. "Elon, you've never been afraid to take on challenges. You've always been able to see the big picture, to take risks that others wouldn't dare. This is no different. But you need to remember that you don't have to do it alone. You have a team, a network of people who believe in you and who are just as committed to this mission as you are." Elon ran a hand through his hair. "I know. It's just that there are so many unknowns right now. I don't even know where to start." "You start by taking it one step at a time," Gwynne said. "We need to prioritize. Start with the projects that will have the most immediate impact. Solar energy, electric vehicles, sustainable manufacturing. Let's make real changes where we can. Then we'll build on that momentum and start moving toward the Mars mission, knowing that we're making a difference here first." Elon took a deep breath. Gwynne's words were exactly what he needed to hear. "Okay. One step at a time. I'll start by meeting with the engineering team. We need to get working on those clean energy solutions. And I need to make sure we're all on the same page. The next day, Elon gathered the SpaceX and Tesla engineering teams in one of the larger conference rooms. He needed their expertise to tackle this new challenge, sustainability. As the team filed in, Elon stood at the front of the room, ready to lay out the vision for the future. "Thank you all for coming," he began, pacing slowly in front of the group. "We've accomplished a lot together, but now we're facing an even bigger challenge. Space exploration and sustainability don't have to be separate goals. In fact, they can't be. We need to take everything we've learned about innovation and efficiency and apply it to making life on Earth sustainable." The team exchanged uncertain glances. Elon continued, "I'm asking you all to think outside the box, to look at our existing technology and push it further. We need to make every process, every product, and every project as sustainable as possible. Whether it's rockets, electric vehicles, or solar energy systems, we need to ensure that we're leaving the planet better than we found it." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the room. "This isn't going to be easy. But I believe in this team. We've overcome impossible odds before. Together, we can prove that innovation and sustainability can go hand in hand." A hand shot up in the back of the room. It was Sarah, one of the senior engineers at SpaceX, who had been with the company from the early days. "Elon, we've been working on improving the efficiency of the Falcon 9, but we've never really focused on reducing its environmental impact. Do you think it's possible to make a significant change to the fuel and launch systems without sacrificing performance?" Elon looked thoughtful for a moment. "It's possible, but it's going to take time and resources. I want you and your team to start looking into alternative fuel sources and ways to improve the launch system. We're going to find a way to make this work." Another engineer, Tom, spoke up. "What about the electric vehicle batteries we've been working on at Tesla? Could we adapt some of those technologies to the rockets? If we can develop more sustainable, long-lasting batteries, it could reduce our carbon footprint." Elon nodded, impressed by the suggestion. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Let's explore it. If we can apply what we're learning at Tesla to SpaceX, we could significantly reduce the environmental impact of our rockets." As the meeting continued, ideas flowed freely. The team brainstormed potential solutions for reducing emissions, making manufacturing more sustainable, and exploring renewable energy alternatives for their operations. It was clear that the challenge ahead was daunting, but for the first time in weeks, Elon felt a sense of hope. This was why he had started these companies in the first place, not just to push the boundaries of space exploration, but to make a real difference in the world. Later that afternoon, Elon found himself in the Tesla factory, walking the floor with J.B. Straubel and the team. They were discussing the next generation of electric vehicles and the ways they could reduce the environmental impact of manufacturing. Elon had always been impressed by Tesla's ability to innovate, and today was no different. "We've made great strides with the Model S, but we need to go further," J.B. said, pointing to a prototype vehicle in the corner of the factory. "We need to think about sustainability at every level: materials, energy use, and even recycling. If we want to be leaders in this space, we have to set the standard for what a sustainable car can be." Elon nodded. "We'll do it. We'll make sure that every aspect of our vehicles is as eco-friendly as possible. And I want us to start looking into the long-term impact of our cars. How can we make them even more energy efficient? What technologies can we integrate to make sure that we're reducing the carbon footprint from production all the way through to disposal?" JB smiled, clearly inspired by Elon's commitment. "We'll need to do some heavy research, but I believe we can make a breakthrough. And we should look at expanding the energy solutions beyond cars. Solar power systems, energy storage. Tesla could be the company that powers homes, entire cities even, with clean energy." Elon's eyes lit up. "Yes. Let's do it. Let's build the future of energy." As the day drew to a close, Elon stood by the large windows of the Tesla factory, looking out at the sunset. The road ahead was still unclear, but for the first time in a while, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting for Mars anymore, he was fighting for a better future here on Earth. And with every step forward, he knew they were closer to proving that both could coexist. That humanity's future was not just written in the stars but also grounded in the earth beneath their feet. The days were blurring together as Elon continued to juggle his commitments to SpaceX, Tesla, and the new direction that was being carved out for both companies. The pressure was mounting, and despite his optimism, there was no denying that the path ahead was more challenging than he had ever anticipated. The ticking clock seemed louder now, echoing every passing second as he worked late into the night, not only overseeing technical advancements but also navigating complex negotiations with environmental organizations, investors, and regulatory bodies. It was an early morning meeting with Gwynne Shotwell that had him feeling the weight of the situation more than usual. He could see the concern on her face, and that made him uneasy. Gwynne had always been a calming force for him, someone who could bring perspective when the chaos of his ambition seemed too overwhelming. "Elon," she began, with a hint of concern in her voice. "We've made progress, but there's been pushback from some of our partners. Some of the investors are starting to question whether the direction you're taking with sustainability will impact our long-term goals. They want to see results, tangible results. And fast." Elon's mind raced, trying to process her words. "I know. I've heard the rumblings. But what do they want me to do, Gwynne? It's not like we can turn around this kind of transformation in a week. We're not just building rockets or electric cars. We're trying to build an entirely new paradigm." Gwynne nodded but didn't ease up. "I agree. But the fact remains that we're in a race. We're not just racing against other companies, Elon. We're racing against time. The world needs solutions now, and if we're going to lead, we need to show progress, not just grand plans." The investors are growing nervous. Elon felt a tightness in his chest. "I understand. But we've never taken the easy route. We've always done things that others thought were impossible. We've turned what others saw as impossible into reality." Gwynne looked at him closely, as if measuring every word. "You're right. But sometimes, impossible isn't just a challenge. It's a risk." For a moment, Elon said nothing. He stared out the window, watching the sunlight creep over the horizon, his mind a swirl of calculations and decisions. The weight of it all, the new responsibility he'd taken on, the expectations, the pressure, was suddenly suffocating. This wasn't just about technology or innovation anymore. This was about the future of Earth. After a long pause, he turned back to Gwynne. "We can't go backward. We can't compromise on our commitment to sustainability. If we do, what's the point of any of this? I won't let SpaceX and Tesla become just another corporation chasing profits at the expense of the planet." Gwynne nodded, her expression softer now. "I don't think anyone is asking you to compromise, Elon. But we need to make sure that we're being strategic. We need to get those quick wins, the ones that can show our investors that we're on track, without losing sight of the bigger picture." Elon's mind spun through potential solutions. What could they do to show that they were moving the needle on sustainability without sacrificing the grand vision he had for Mars? "There's one thing I've been thinking about," Elon said, his voice steady. "What if we accelerate the development of Tesla's new battery technology? If we can make significant improvements in energy storage and efficiency, it could change everything. Not only for electric vehicles, but for solar power too. We could make renewable energy a viable solution for the world's infrastructure, and that would be the kind of breakthrough that would get everyone's attention." Gwynne's eyes brightened. "That's ambitious. But it could be the solution we're looking for. Let's take a step back, evaluate the technology, and see where we can push the envelope. If we can make these breakthroughs sooner, we could lead the charge in global energy transformation." Elon felt a sense of determination rising within him. He wasn't about to be deterred by doubt or time. The clock was ticking, but he had faced much bigger challenges before and overcome them. Now was no different. "I'll call JB, Elon said, already reaching for his phone. "Let's push forward with this." That afternoon, Elon called JB Straubel, who was working on Tesla's new energy storage system. The energy storage project was still in its early stages, but Elon knew that this was the breakthrough that could transform everything. "Elon," JB said, picking up the phone, "we've made some headway, but there's still a lot of work to do before we can achieve the kind of energy efficiency we need. We're still working on the next generation of batteries." Elon didn't hesitate. "What if we accelerate it? What if we bring all our resources to bear and push this forward at an unprecedented pace? We can't afford to take our time with this. If we're going to prove that we can innovate for the planet and for Mars, we need to have a major breakthrough in the next 6 months." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you serious about this? It's going to require an enormous amount of resources and manpower." "I'm serious," Elon replied. "And I believe in this team. If anyone can do it, we can. Let's get started today. We're going to make sure that our next generation of batteries isn't just an improvement. It's going to be a game changer." In the days that followed, the pace at both SpaceX and Tesla quickened. Teams were restructured, new resources were allocated, and the focus shifted from long-term projects to the immediate goal of accelerating the energy storage technology. Elon, ever the driving force behind the teams, pushed them hard, demanding results but also inspiring them with his vision. His relentless determination began to have its effect. But as the pressure mounted, Elon started to see cracks in the foundation. Late nights spent poring over data, constant meetings with investors, engineers, and stakeholders, and the ever-present sense of urgency were beginning to take their toll. It wasn't just the technical challenges that wore on him, it was the constant feeling of being torn in multiple directions. One evening, as Elon sat in his office reviewing progress reports, he heard a knock on the door. It was Gwyn again. "Long day?" she asked, entering the room without waiting for an answer. She sat across from him, her gaze knowing. Elon sighed, rubbing his eyes. "It's getting to me. There's so much at stake right now. And with every step forward, I feel like I'm running out of time." Gwyn leaned forward. "Elon, you've always been the one to go the extra mile. But sometimes, you need to let your team carry the weight with you. You don't have to do it all on your own." Elon stared at the papers before him, feeling a tinge of frustration. "I know. But the world is watching, Gwyn. They're waiting for us to deliver. And I'm not going to let them down." Gwyn nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "You won't. But don't forget, your team is just as committed. You don't have to carry the weight of the world alone." Elon exhaled slowly. "I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing." "You are," Gwyn assured him. "And you're not alone in this." As the conversation ended and Gwyn left his office, Elon allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had always been driven by a desire to change the world, to make a lasting impact. But now, with everything at stake, he realized that the true test wasn't just in his ability to innovate, it was in his ability to inspire and trust those around him. And with that realization, he took the next step toward a future that was both uncertain and filled with infinite possibilities. The first signs of burnout began to show when Elon found himself unable to focus as sharply as he once had. His mind, always racing with new ideas and solutions, seemed to move more slowly now. It wasn't just the long hours or the physical toll, it was the mental exhaustion of trying to solve what sometimes felt like an insurmountable puzzle. He knew this wasn't just about making quick fixes, it was about reshaping industries, disrupting traditional thinking, and making the future a reality. But the mounting pressure was taking its toll. Each day brought more complex challenges, more meetings, and more decisions that required his full attention. One particular morning, Elon woke up feeling the weight of it all. He had been working non-stop for the past week, and despite his usual resilience, he could feel himself beginning to crack. He called Gwyn as soon as he stepped out of bed. "Gwyn, I need to talk," he said, his voice thick with fatigue. Gwyn, always sharp and attentive, picked up immediately. "What's going on, Elon? You sound off." Elon leaned against the counter in his kitchen, trying to collect his thoughts. "I don't know if I can keep up. Every day feels like I'm barely keeping my head above water. The sustainability initiative, the Mars mission, it's all blending into one massive project, and I can't separate them. I feel like I'm failing on both fronts." Gwyn was quiet for a moment. "Elon, this isn't about doing everything yourself. You're running two major companies that are both doing groundbreaking work, and there's only so much one person can do. You need to delegate, take a step back, and trust your team. SpaceX and Tesla are strong because of the people around you, not just you." Elon closed his eyes. He knew she was right, but the responsibility he felt, both to his teams and to the world, was overwhelming. "I don't want to let anyone down. I don't want to let Earth or Mars down." "I get it," Gwyn said softly. "But if you burn out, you won't be able to lead them in the long run. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You need to pace yourself." Elon ran a hand through his hair. "I'll try. But I can't help but feel like I'm running out of time. We need to show progress, real progress, on sustainability. We need to be the example for the world, but I'm not sure how much longer I can keep up the pace." "You're not alone in this," Gwyn reassured him. "We're all in this together. You don't have to carry the weight of the world alone." That evening, after a long day of meetings and strategy sessions, Elon decided to take a walk outside. He needed space to think, to breathe, to step away from the ever-looming deadlines and responsibilities. As he walked through the quiet streets of the neighborhood, his mind wandered back to his original vision, the one that had driven him from the very beginning. The dream of colonizing Mars, of creating a self-sustaining colony on the red planet, still burned brightly within him. But now, more than ever, he understood the stakes on Earth. The planet was facing serious environmental challenges, and if anyone could help lead the way toward a solution, it was him, and the companies he had built. But there was a problem. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that sustainability and space exploration were inextricably linked. The technology that SpaceX and Tesla developed could transform Earth's future, but the ultimate goal had always been to reach Mars. And he couldn't afford to lose sight of that long-term vision, even as he worked to solve urgent problems here on Earth. His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his reverie. It was a text from J.B. Straubel. "Got some good news, Elon. The energy storage project is ahead of schedule. We're seeing a significant boost in efficiency. It's looking like we can push this out sooner than expected." A sense of relief washed over him. This was the breakthrough they had been working toward. It wasn't the end-all solution, but it was a step in the right direction. A significant step. Elon texted back quickly. "Great news. Let's talk more tomorrow. Keep pushing the envelope." For the first time in days, he felt a spark of hope. This was the kind of progress he needed, the kind that would show investors and the world that they were serious about their sustainability goals. If they could get the energy storage systems to work efficiently, it could revolutionize the way energy was stored and distributed, making solar power and other renewable resources far more viable on a global scale. It could be the key to reducing the carbon footprint of industries worldwide, and it could demonstrate that his vision wasn't just about Mars, it was about Earth, too. The next morning, Elon arrived at the Tesla factory early, eager to meet with JB and the team to discuss the latest developments. They had been pushing the energy storage project hard, and Elon needed to see the results for himself. As he walked into the lab, JB was standing in front of a large screen, showing the data. "Here's where we stand," JB said, pointing to a graph that showed a steady increase in energy efficiency. "We've reduced the energy loss by 15%, and the new battery system is holding up under stress testing." If we can maintain this trajectory, we'll have a viable system in the next few months. Elon stepped forward, studying the data with intense focus. This is incredible. If we can get this right, it'll change everything. But we can't afford to slow down. I want us to double down on this effort. I want the next prototype within the next 3 weeks, and then we'll test it in real-world conditions. JB nodded, clearly excited by the possibilities. We'll make it happen. Elon's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Gwyn. The board is meeting this afternoon to discuss your sustainability initiative. I'll need you to come prepared with solid results. This is a make-or-break moment. His heart sank. This was it, the moment he had been dreading. The moment when everything could come crashing down. He needed results. He needed to prove to everyone that he wasn't just talking about change, he was making it happen. Elon's mind raced. He had made promises. Now, he needed to deliver. Later that afternoon, Elon sat at the head of the boardroom table, facing the members of Tesla and SpaceX's leadership teams. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Gwyn sat next to him, her presence a quiet anchor in the storm. Elon cleared his throat. I know you all have doubts. The challenges ahead are monumental. But I'm here to tell you that we're on the verge of something truly revolutionary. We're making significant progress with the energy storage project, and that's just the beginning. We're committed to leading the world in sustainability, and we're going to prove that it's possible to achieve both our environmental and space exploration goals. There was a murmur around the table. Elon could feel the skepticism, but he pressed on. We're not just innovating for the sake of innovation. We're changing the way the world works. And this, right here, is the turning point. Gwyn leaned forward. This is not just about numbers or data. It's about making a real impact, for both Earth and Mars. And we're seeing results. But we need your continued trust. Together, we can do this. Elon looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the key players, people who had believed in him from the beginning. We're on the right path. And we'll prove it. We'll do it together. For a moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, the board members nodded. The tension in the room eased, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. Elon felt a small surge of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this was just the beginning. The momentum Elon had been building at Tesla and SpaceX was palpable. With each passing day, he could sense a shift, his teams were more energized, more committed. They had a breakthrough with the energy storage technology, and investors were beginning to take notice. The pressure was still immense, but for the first time in months, Elon felt like they were truly on the verge of something extraordinary. But as the progress began to snowball, so did the challenges. Elon had always known that success didn't come without opposition, but what he hadn't anticipated was how personal the stakes were becoming. It all started with a seemingly innocuous email. It was a message from one of Tesla's top engineers, Derek, someone Elon had trusted implicitly for years. Derek had always been vocal in his belief in the company's mission, but the subject of the email was worrying. Subject, urgent, potential legal and regulatory challenges. Elon opened it immediately, his eyes scanning the text. The message was filled with unsettling details. Derek mentioned a growing concern among several Tesla employees about the company's potential environmental impact. He warned that there were allegations being leveled against Tesla by a coalition of environmental activists, claiming that the company's manufacturing practices were far more damaging to the environment than previously understood. The email implied that the company's energy storage technology, despite its promise, could have unintended consequences that could hurt the company's reputation if not properly addressed. The tone was cautious, but Elon could feel the weight behind each word. Derek was implying that they were about to face a major challenge from both legal and regulatory bodies, and if they weren't careful, Tesla's entire sustainability initiative could come crashing down. Elon sat back in his chair, staring at the email for a long time. He knew that the world was watching. Tesla had positioned itself as the leader in sustainable energy solutions, and any hiccup in that narrative could severely damage the brand's credibility. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized something: this wasn't just about Tesla. This was about SpaceX as well. The realization hit him like a freight train. The people who wanted to see Tesla and SpaceX fail, there were many, and they were powerful, weren't just trying to sabotage one company. They were trying to undermine his entire vision. If Tesla's sustainability initiative faltered, it could take SpaceX's mission to Mars with it. Both companies were inextricably linked, and any setback in one could result in a catastrophic chain reaction. Elon's thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Gwyn, looking as poised as ever, though there was a concern in her eyes that immediately set him on edge. "Elon, I just got off the phone with legal," she said, walking into the room. "We've been hearing the same rumors. The coalition of environmentalists isn't just focused on Tesla, they've also reached out to SpaceX. They're raising concerns about the environmental cost of rocket launches, particularly the carbon emissions involved. And they're threatening to take this to the courts." Elon rubbed his temples. "I knew this was coming, but I didn't think it would happen so soon. It feels like the whole world is against us right now." Gwyn took a seat across from him. "It's not the whole world. But there's no denying that there are some powerful forces working against us. If they succeed in getting regulators to enforce new emission standards on rocket launches, it could ground SpaceX. And if Tesla's energy storage technology comes under fire, we'll lose the momentum we've built. People need to see that our companies are not just talking about saving the planet, they need to see us walking the walk." Elon stared out the window, his mind spinning. This was the last thing he needed. They had just made significant progress in energy storage, but now, they had to face a massive legal and PR crisis that could set them back years. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice strained. "We fight back," Gwyn said firmly. "We need to show the world that we're not only committed to sustainability but that we're transparent, we're responsible, and we're willing to make the necessary adjustments to get it right. We need to bring in our top engineers, work with environmental experts, and form a strategy to counter these allegations head-on." Elon nodded, but the weight of the situation pressed down on him. It's not just about Tesla or SpaceX. If this fails, it's not just a legal battle. It's the foundation of everything we've worked for. "I know," Gwyn said. "But we've overcome bigger challenges before, Elon. We just need to approach this with the same determination we've always had." Elon exhaled slowly, feeling the pressure settle back in his chest. "We can't afford to lose this battle." Over the next few weeks, Elon dove headfirst into crisis management. Legal teams from both Tesla and SpaceX were working around the clock, analyzing the environmental concerns and assessing the validity of the claims. At the same time, Elon, Gwyn, and the leadership teams had extensive meetings with environmental experts, regulatory bodies, and even activists who had raised concerns in the first place. They needed to make their case, and make it convincingly, that the long-term benefits of both Tesla's and SpaceX's work far outweighed any short-term environmental costs. Elon wasn't just looking for a way to win the case. He was looking for a way to prove that they could lead the world in environmental sustainability while still achieving the technological feats they had set out to accomplish. As the battle raged on in the public sphere, Elon began to realize that the issue wasn't just about the legal implications, it was about public perception. The companies needed to not only prove that they were doing good work for the planet but also that they were genuinely committed to continuous improvement. During one heated meeting with the Tesla and SpaceX teams, Elon addressed his employees. "This isn't just a legal battle. This is our chance to show the world who we really are. This is about more than just us, it's about the future of humanity. We're not just building cars or rockets. We're building a sustainable future, and we need to act accordingly." The words echoed through the room, and for a moment, Elon could see the fire in his team's eyes. He knew they weren't just in this for the technology, they were in this for something bigger. Together, they would find a way to prove that Tesla and SpaceX weren't just fighting for profits, they were fighting for the future of the planet. As the days wore on, the pressure mounted. Elon couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher than ever. If they failed, not only would the companies lose everything they had worked for, but his entire vision for the future would come crashing down. But he wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. The road ahead was going to be difficult, but Elon knew that the only way forward was to keep pushing forward. He had always believed in the power of innovation, and now, more than ever, he needed to trust in the genius of his teams, and in his own ability to lead them through the storm. The battle was far from over, but Elon Musk was ready to fight for the future he had always believed in. He wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The weeks that followed the legal challenges felt like a blur. The constant press inquiries, legal meetings, and strategy sessions drained every ounce of energy Elon had left. The stress of keeping both Tesla and SpaceX afloat while also trying to salvage his vision for the future was overwhelming. But he knew that he couldn't afford to lose focus. The stakes were too high, not just for the companies but for the world. It had been nearly a month since the legal battle with the environmental activists had kicked into high gear, and tensions were running higher than ever. Every move they made was scrutinized, every press release dissected. The public's opinion was divided, some believed in Elon's vision, while others were starting to question the sustainability of his ambitious plans. At the same time, the activists' movement was gaining momentum. It was clear that they weren't just trying to take down Tesla or SpaceX, they were rallying a larger cause, one that questioned the ethics of Elon's companies and the larger corporate world. There were whispers of widespread protests planned for major cities, and even a few high-profile political figures were beginning to voice concerns about the environmental impact of rocket launches and electric car manufacturing. Elon was tired. His mind was exhausted, and he hadn't slept well in weeks. The pressure had been relentless. He would wake up in the middle of the night, his mind racing with thoughts of the companies, the lawsuits, the media, everything that was at risk. The weight of it all was suffocating. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, as Elon was reviewing the latest developments with Gwyn, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from J.B. Straubel, the former Tesla CTO, who had always been a trusted advisor and friend. Message: Elon, I think I have an idea that could solve both the legal issue and boost public perception. We need to take the high road. It's time to be bold. Elon stared at the message for a moment, then quickly called J.B. When the call connected, Elon wasted no time. What do you mean, bold? What do you have in mind? J.B.'s voice was steady, but Elon could hear the excitement in it. What if we announce a new initiative? Something that ties into both our companies. We already have the energy storage technology breakthrough, but we need something more. Something that shows we're willing to go further, even if it's uncomfortable. What if we promise to offset the environmental impact of every single Tesla car and SpaceX rocket launch, starting right now? Elon's heart skipped a beat. The idea was simple, but it was bold, and that's exactly what they needed. The activists had always questioned the environmental cost of rocket launches and electric cars, but what if they could turn that criticism into an opportunity? He leaned back in his chair. So, you're saying we should commit to making everything we do carbon neutral, not just on paper, but in practice? Not just Tesla but SpaceX too? Exactly, J.B. replied. We could partner with global environmental groups to make it official. We could offset the carbon emissions from every single launch and every Tesla sold. And we'd make the commitment publicly, no more promises in the future. It'll be immediate. Elon thought for a moment. That could be the game changer we need. But can we do it? I mean, do we have the resources to back up such a massive commitment? Don't we always find a way? J.B. said with a grin in his voice. Elon smiled despite himself. You're right. All right, let's do it. The next few days were a blur of action. They worked with Tesla's sustainability team and SpaceX's engineers to come up with a plan to offset the carbon emissions. They found ways to work with environmental organizations, integrating them into their existing infrastructure, and they secured partnerships to ensure that their claims were backed by real, measurable action. Once they had a plan, Elon called a press conference. The world needed to hear about this commitment, and they needed to hear it from him. The day of the press conference, the media frenzy was intense. Reporters from every corner of the world had gathered in a large hall at Tesla's headquarters. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust in front of him, and the weight of the world seemed to fall on his shoulders. Gwyn stood next to him, her presence steady and calm. She had been instrumental in getting the plan off the ground, and now, it was time to show the world that they were ready to take responsibility for their actions. Elon cleared his throat, his voice steady despite the anxiety that churned in his stomach. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. As you know, Tesla and SpaceX have been at the forefront of the clean energy and space exploration revolution. But we've also come to realize that our success cannot come at the expense of the planet. We've always aimed to reduce our environmental footprint, but now, it's time to take our commitment to the next level. The room was silent, every ear tuned to his words. We're announcing today that, effective immediately, every Tesla car and every SpaceX rocket launch will be carbon neutral. We are partnering with environmental organizations around the world to offset the emissions from our products, and we will continue to innovate in ways that help us make the planet, and beyond, a better place for future generations. This is not just a promise. This is an action. We're taking responsibility for our role in the world's environmental challenges, and we are committed to doing everything we can to help solve them. The room erupted into applause, but Elon didn't let himself get distracted. He knew that this move would make waves. It would silence some critics and answer many questions. But more importantly, it would set a new standard for the entire industry. It was the kind of bold, unapologetic decision that would make the world rethink what it meant to be a corporate leader in the 21st century. The next few weeks saw an outpouring of support. Environmental groups praised the decision, recognizing the sincerity behind it. The media began to shift its focus from the allegations against Tesla and SpaceX to the company's proactive stance on sustainability. Investors who had previously been on the fence were now on board, seeing this as a turning point for both companies. But perhaps most importantly, Elon felt a sense of peace. The pressure had not disappeared, but it had shifted. They had faced down the threat, not by retreating, but by stepping into the light and making a commitment that would leave a lasting legacy. The road ahead was still long, and there were challenges yet to come, but Elon knew that they had just turned a corner. And this time, there was no turning back. As he stood on the stage, answering questions from reporters, Elon realized that the fight for the future had only just begun. But this time, he wasn't alone. With his team behind him and the world watching, Elon Musk was ready to push the boundaries of what was possible, and in doing so, change the world forever. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?